Good afternoon. Welcome to part 2 of Perth and Kinross Council. We now move on to item 5, which is notice of motion, and I'd invite Councillor John Duff to move his motion.
Thank you, Provost, for the opportunity to speak to this motion that this council should declare a health and social care emergency in Perth and Kinross. At the last council meeting, members were briefed on significant demographic and population changes for Perth and Kinross, which will result in an associated increase in the health and social care needs of residents and increasing levels of complexity and demand. Recent data presented to members on these changing demographics within the council area and the increasing cost of care packages indicates that we will continue to see unparalleled pressure on demand for our health and social care services. Members are also aware that we approved additional funding of nearly £11 million in our health and social care partnership during this financial year to ensure the continued delivery of adult social work and social care services in Perth and Kinross. In order to do this, we approved the council tax increase of 9.5%, the highest in the council's history, and have depleted our unearmarked reserves, which currently sit at around 2.4%, just above our lower limit. As we all know, the continued use of reserves to bolster these or any other recurring services is not in any way sustainable. The Scottish Fiscal Commission's report on fiscal sustainability, published in April this year, reported that healthcare now amounts to 36% of the Scottish budget, and they forecast this to rise to 47% of the budget over the next 50 years. For social care, the Commission reports that it accounts for 7% of the budget, but will more than double during the same period to £11 billion across Scotland. Since 2001, population growth in Perth and Kinross is up 14.1%, significantly higher than Scotland as a whole. Our population over the next 20 years is projected to rise by a further 12% in comparison to 6% for Scotland. The greatest areas for increase in our population since 2001 have been in the 65 plus years age group, but over the next 20 years, the greatest change will be in the 85 years plus age groups. Life expectancy has increased to 82.6 years for females and 78.8 years for males in Perth and Kinross, both above the Scottish average. The data reveals that these changes are coming at a time when there will be a drop in our biggest caring population, the 50 to 64-year-old age group, many of whom are currently looking after ageing parents. This will have an impact both on carer availability and care staffing numbers. It is therefore vital that the Scottish Government ensures that an appropriate, sustainable level of funding is made available to local authorities. This will mean that health and social care partnerships can continue to deliver the levels of integrated social care which our residents need, enable them to recruit and retain its key workers, and provide the early intervention measures, the family support and the community-led services which will reduce the needs for crisis care. We're also very conscious of the effects of rurality on the costs and logistics for services in Perth and Kinross, an area which I feel is not properly factored in for rural and island authorities. We therefore call upon the Scottish Government to urgently reassess the rural health and social care premium in the national funding allocations. Point 4 provides some further proposals to assist in the provision of a health and social care workforce, training pathways, key worker housing, care apprenticeships and training for local residents. Provost, we believe that we are at a significant moment for the future of health and social care in Perth and Kinross. The changes that we know are coming will only result in a more complex, more demanding, more expensive and more critical service which we will need to provide. I know that we do not, under any circumstances, want our debate today to frighten those who rely on or who will come to rely on our health and social care services. However, the longer we delay raising these issues to the higher level of a health and social care emergency, the tougher the job will be to find the best solution to this critically important issue. I therefore support the declaration by this Council of a health and social care emergency and recommend this motion to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to Councillor Forbes to second it, please.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, I second this motion because the evidence before us is stark and it's urgent. Councillor Duff has already mentioned the Scottish Fiscal Commission's 2025 report, which also makes clear that health and social care costs will rise faster than any other area of public spending over the next 25 years, driven by an ageing population and an increasing prevalence of long-term conditions. As Councillor Duff has said, in Scotland, the population aged 85 and over is projected to almost double, and this demographic shift will hit us earlier than the rest of the UK. That means higher demand for care, while funding growth lags behind. Locally, Perth and Kinross faces unique pressures. Our health and social care partnership is already grappling with a huge overspend, and there are three critical challenges: a rapidly ageing population with rising complex needs, a shrinking working age population and severe recruitment difficulties, and the logistical challenge of delivering services across the vast rural geography. National bodies like Social Work Scotland have warned that the current funding formula fails to reflect these rural realities. The Barnett formula does not account for Scotland's older population, and as Councillor Duff also said, the higher cost of rural service delivery. Without urgent action, inequalities between rural and urban Scotland will deepen. So this motion calls for practical steps, declaring a health and social care emergency to signal the gravity of the situation, pressing the Scottish Government for sustainable funding, improved workforce recruitment and retention, and investment in early intervention and community-led services, reassessing the rural health and social care premium to reflect the true cost of care in areas like ours, supporting local training pathways. I want to make it absolutely clear, colleagues, this is not about politics, it's about safeguarding the well-being of our communities. If we fail to act now, we risk a future where vulnerable people cannot access the care they need. I urge you to support this motion, send a clear message to the Scottish Government that Perth and Kinross needs urgent, coordinated action to secure a sustainable future for health and social care. If we don't call this an emergency, then I don't know what qualifies as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. I have an amendment. I will come to your point of clarification after all the amendments have been moved, Councillor McEwen. First of all, an amendment from the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, I do find myself in agreement with very much of but not all of this motion and what has been said in support of it. And I seek support for the amendment, which I see is now on screen. And there are two elements, one of which Councillor Duff has touched upon. I believe that the proposed emergency declaration headline would have what I'm sure is a completely unintended consequence. It would seriously risk striking fear and alarm into the minds of the very individuals and families whose lives and well-being are significantly dependent on the services provided via our health and social care partnership. The remainder of the motion effectively seeks to hold the Scottish Government to account without the headline. I also believe that such a declaration would, in any event, be premature. We are just 5 weeks away from the Scottish Government budget at Holyrood, the content of which is currently unknown, of course, but further investment in health and social care is known to be very high priority. We're also only 1 week ahead of the next Perth and Kinross IJB meeting, where I expect robust consideration of necessary measures to help address the ongoing financial situation while protecting services will be undertaken by its board members based on detailed information, together with senior officer options and recommendations of which no elected member currently has detailed knowledge. Only if the Scottish Government does not provide more sustainable financial support in the health and social care space, and Perth and Kinross IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership fail to grasp the nettle as indicated, accelerating and intensifying necessary transformation in order to generate more operational efficiencies, should this Council contemplate, in my opinion, the declaration of an emergency. At the last full Council, I gave colleagues clear assurances that I would speak and meet with the Cabinet Secretaries for Health and Social Care and for Finance, while also briefing the First Minister. I have duly done all of that, and I can advise that additional social care funding is absolutely one of the top priorities of the Scottish Government. And at a meeting with Mr Gray and Ms Robeson yesterday afternoon, I once again strongly emphasised the points that rurality and age demographics again must be appropriately factored into distribution methodologies. And I have also urged COSLA leaders to back this. I know that focused efforts will continue to secure further improvements in health and social care delivery and the structured organisation that underpins this area. I also asked for urgent work to be done to resolve the recurring issues on funding of complex care packages. So that's the first element. And the second element is that the motion also does not seek to hold to account either COSLA on behalf of all 32 local authorities or NHS Scotland on behalf of the regional NHS boards to take action, or indeed our local IJB and Health and Social Care Partnership to take decisive steps to help itself. My amendment seeks to address this, and I hope that at least consensus on these clauses might be achievable today. Finally, I simply must take the opportunity to thank the fantastic professionals who day in, day out deliver quality services with total commitment within the existing frameworks. We are all indebted to them, and we need to support our frontline workers. Colleagues, I move this amendment and urge all elected members to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McColl. Second.
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, it's already established that health and social care partnerships throughout Scotland are facing challenging times ahead, and that is not in dispute. Perth and Kinross is no different. So there is much in the narrative of this motion that I cannot disagree with. But the most substantive part of the motion that I do disagree with is to seek a declaration of a health and social care emergency. This, in my view, is premature and risks causing unnecessary worry for those in receipt of services. Our Health and Social Care Partnership is not only aware of the challenges facing them, but have done the responsible thing and proactively brought these issues to this Council and its Integrated Joint Board and to NHS Tayside Board, all of whom are participants in this conversation. Upon being made aware of pressures from increased demand in 25-26, the Council was correct to provide additional support to ensure continuity of services for the remainder of this financial year, as was NHS Tayside Board, who also, as a partner in the Integrated Joint Board, also provided additional funding to ensure that the health aspect was also covered. What is equally correct is that a comprehensive review of the health and social care service delivery model is undertaken, including factoring in the impact of the latest population and demographic projections for Perth and Kinross. This review is in progress and seeks to identify what changes may be required to deliver services sustainably within a balanced budget framework from 2026-27 and beyond. And a report will be brought back to this Council at its meeting in January 2026, as we requested. Councillor Drysdale has already highlighted that we're unsighted in the Scottish Government funding settlement for social care, but so also is the Health Board and so also our local authorities. In reaching that settlement, there will be representation from all involved, including the NHS and COSLA and this Council. We must also take into account that the motion has not, is the respective responsibilities and governance arrangements of the Integrated Joint Board and NHS Tayside, who is also a partner in the Health and Social Care Partnership. I would contend that making a universal declaration of any type of emergency without the engagement with our partners is not only premature, but I think it's unsafe. Colleagues, I think most of us here today know someone, whether it be one of us, a constituent, a neighbour, friends or family, who are in receipt of services delivered by our Health and Social Care Partnership. And I hope that collectively we acknowledge that those who are in receipt of services are often the most vulnerable in our society. And I would also hope that we recognise and are cognisant of the role of unpaid carers in providing supplementary support to the services we provide as a council. With that collective understanding, it is very important that we are mindful of how important the language we use is and how it will be perceived by those in our communities that we serve. Despite what Councillor Duff has said on this, to prematurely declare an uninformed emergency status is very likely to cause distress and anxiety, which I'm sure none of us would want. Colleagues, until the outcome of the operational review that is in progress will be brought back to this council, and until we have clarity on the financial settlement via the Scottish Government budget process, an emergency declaration is premature when we do not have all the relevant evidence and information available to us. I've already said that there's much in the motion that I cannot disagree with, but to make a declaration of emergency will cause avoidable anxiety and distress and does not recognise the ongoing roles of the Integrated Joint Board and other public partners. This amendment seeks to address these issues, and I'm happy to second it and commend it to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Peter Barrett with your amendment.
Thanks, Provost. There was a lot of hope in what Sheila McCall was saying. I think sadly an awful lot was misguided because if we don't take action now and we leave it till we know every detail to the nth degree, then it's going to be too late to make any impression upon the decision makers in the Scottish Government. This motion covers much of the ground that I raised at the last council meeting and again at the Finance and Resources meeting, coincidentally the day that Argyll and Bute Council were debating the very similar motion to what we have in front of us today. Unfortunately, they shied away from declaring a health and social care emergency, and I don't think that we can afford to make the same mistake. The figures support that definition. Despite additional investment in health and social care services from this council of over £6 million in this current year's budget, the IGB have incurred an in-year overspend of £4.6 million, 4.2 of which lands on the council. I challenged John Swinney, the First Minister at the COSLA conference, to take urgent action to address the £500 million overspend by Scottish councils on health and social care again in the current year. And if that doesn't constitute an emergency, again, I don't know what does. But challenged him to use the Scottish Government's £567 million underspend in 24-25 and not leave it sitting in the Scotland Reserve. But so far, that plea has fallen on deaf ears, and John Swinney hasn't volunteered any assistance to councils, not even here in his own constituency. And I suspect that he's hoping that if he keeps his head down, it will all go away and he won't be forced to stump up cash until public pressure forces him to do that. I share the concerns that the movers of the motion have, but Neil Gray is never going to be able to get us the money that we need without John Swinney's saying so. Eric Drysdale commendably has already agreed at my request to speak to Neil Gray, Shona Robson and John Swinney, but unfortunately Eric has come up short. I'm really grateful for him asking nicely, but nicely isn't going to cut it. We need to emphasise the emergency nature of the crisis that we're in and the emergency need for funding, and we're only going to be able to do that by declaring the emergency. So today, or later on today, we'll find out just how drastic the savings proposals that the IGB are going to consider in their recovery plan in a week's time. We'll know maybe not the full extent of those, but we'll certainly know what's going to be in Plan A and Plan B, and not just the high-level headings. But the high-level headings that we have are bad enough. And if they don't constitute an emergency, again, what will? We're talking about fewer vulnerable people going to get the care that they need in Perth and Kinross if eligibility criteria are tightened.
Medically fit people will wait unacceptable lengths of time being detained by the state in hospital beds that they don't need to be in, while operating longer waiting lists for care packages. And all the time, people's physical and mental well-being deteriorates, meaning that when they eventually do get out of hospital, even more intensive care at home or care home packages are going to be required when they get out. Fewer people are going to be cared for at home if we're forced to cap the cost of care packages at home and force people out of their homes and into care homes away from their families and loved ones. The level of painless efficiency savings that can be made are a tiny, probably infinitesimal fraction of the £4.18 million that we need to find for this year to carry into next year. And that's even before we talk about what savings or additional investment we need to make on top of last year's £6 million to address next year's pressure. And if you think that those sort of savings are going to be made like that, then again, you're sadly mistaken. If you don't recognise with sufficient sensitivity and recognition of people's vulnerabilities to achieve the whole of that saving from day one in a new financial year, then again, you're going to be woefully mistaken. So I agree with the thrust of the motion, but a meeting or a letter to Neil Gray isn't going to be enough. We need to speak to people who control the purse strings, and that's John Swinney and Shona Robson, and reinforce the efforts that Eric has already made through political channels available to him. I repeat, my offer to assist in any of those efforts is there to do so in any way I can. I hope that the Conservatives will consider incorporating our amendment into their motion and that we can speak as one voice in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren, you're seconding this.
Thank you, Provost. I'll be brief. With the continual underfunding of the Health and Social Care Partnership by the SNP Scottish Government, plugging the financial gap to continue to deliver services to vulnerable adults with impairment is falling on the shoulders of Perth and Kinross Council, shoulders which have a lot of pressure stacked upon them. This is a silent car crash happening, which John Swinney, Neil Gray and colleagues seem to be overlooking. The impact has been felt by those working in the sector, those receiving care, those anxiously waiting for care and their loved ones, and not forgetting council budgets. We cannot continue to silently accept the underfunding, top up millions year on year. Enough is enough. This is just not fair for all residents of Perth and Kinross. And I'm happy to support Councillor Peter Barrett's amendment.
Thank you very much, Bailey McLaren. Councillor Tom McEwen, you have a point of clarification.
I would say the presentations of the amendments met my point of clarity, so I'll leave what I'm going to say to a comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Bailey with first comment then.
Thank you, and thank you for those who brought the motions and amendments today. Once again, we find ourselves disagreeing about how to agree with one another in this chamber. I'm not a fan of declaring an emergency without taking real action, but at the same time, it was my motion in 2017 at the Kinross High School meeting of the full council that first called for the rurality to be taken into account. We wrote to the Scottish Government then, and we can write again now, but I'm not sure it'll make a jot of difference. Those of us elected in 2017, and sorry for all the history lessons, might remember the former chief executive sitting us all down and telling us in the week after that election that the biggest and most fundamental challenge that this council needed to address was even then the ageing population and therefore the increasing needs for health and social care. That was 9 years ago. So while I agree there's now an emergency of sorts, it's one that has arisen from inaction, not from any surprise arising from new data or new trends. However, I'm seeking practical steps today rather than alarmist headlines, so I'll be backing the Drysdale amendment. Or better, if Councillor Drysdale were to incorporate Councillor Barrett's wording, I think that would be the best of all worlds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lane next.
Has stolen some of what I was going to say, but my history lesson goes back even further to about 2012 and 13, when we changed the way that we delivered home care and went and started going to the private sector. Back then, this was going to be a big saving and managed to enable it to go forward. Never agreed with it then. don't agree with it now. What I feel is that we are culpable. I'm culpable, and that people who've been here for that long, we never, right from the start, funded the IGB sufficiently. We were, and we've been told we hadn't funded it at the beginning, and it's gone through various administrations and other things that we've never funded it. That's why we've ended up facing what we face now. I agree with a lot of it. We are getting to a stage where we must get extra funding in this next year. 10% of a rise when inflation's only 4 just shows the way we're going. But we're all culpable. We have not looked after. I don't think that many elected members here actually understand how the IGB works. It's like something else that takes away a fifth or more of our funding, and we don't follow it. It's very difficult for officers, and they're making. At times, it's getting to the point where officers are making sort of godlike decisions, you know, who gets this and who's going to get, and that's only going to get worse, which is terrible for the people out there. We have to come forward with a new plan. Rurality should definitely be a face of it, where people have got to travel to look after people. Recruitment difficulties, you're not going to change that until you change pay and conditions. You're not going to change that if you put blocks on immigration. Out in the rural area, my mother's got 8 carers, 7 of them are Sri Lankan and 1's Romanian. So don't say that any plan you come up and throw money at recruitment is going to help. It won't. I'll say no more.
Thank you. Councillor Tom McEwen.
Thank you very much, Provost. I thought what Bailey said was extremely well thought. I thought that we're all trying to agree with each other here by being non-political but being political at the same time. I think that this service that we provide, that we're providing better now than we ever have, to more people, more often, and to a higher standard because of the care that's needed for people. We're doing a good job on health and social care, but it's costing us more. The issues coming forward here is that this has to be done in collaboration. I'd be how much more supportive if what we had in front of us today was a declaration by the joint leaders of the council, like we have done in the past, rather than a motion to council, which is basically a veiled attempt at Holyrood electioneering, in my opinion. COSLA, the NHS through NRAC and through TAGRA, who are organisations within the NHS who decide on funding structures, have 3-year cycles about how the funding is allocated. That does contain a calculation about rurality, about age, about demographics, and that process has actually just been renewed and approved. None of that is in this motion. I had to go find that myself because this is not within the competence of this council and the things that we normally deal with officers. I may be slightly taken incorrectly on that because I don't have officers to be able to correct us on this. So again, we're trying to make decisions on something that are slightly outside of our remit when it comes to the funding, rather than how the IGB functions itself, which is our function. I'd be much happier if the council groups had got together to discuss this, because we agree on 90% of this completely, and then there's small bits of it that we don't agree on. And I think that could have been hashed out and agreed and ended up with a declaration by this council. And I do feel that Councillor Drysdale has done more than Councillor Barrett portrayed him to have done in the background. But again, that's about people's opinions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As it happens, next is Councillor Barrett, if you wish to sum up.
I will do very briefly, Provost. I didn't want to alarm any people in receipt of care in Perth and Kinross, and that wasn't my intention, but I would say that the ongoing silence from the Scottish Government is the real cause of anxiety. I'm grateful that it would appear perhaps that everybody wants to adopt the Lib Dem amendment. It maybe serves as a stark contrast to the predicament that Councillor Stewart found himself in earlier this afternoon. But we are in the midst of a health and social care emergency, and we shouldn't be frightened to say as much. I think Tommy maybe misconstrued what I said. I sought to applaud Eric's efforts, and I think they were genuine efforts, and he's pursued them with all the cabinet ministers and secretaries that matter. But we still haven't had a positive response, and that was the point that I was trying to make. And I think that the only way they're going to listen is if we make enough noise about this subject, and we need to do that long before the budget negotiations and the settlement decision is made in January of next year, and that means saying so now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. If I can ask the Leader of the Council if he wishes to sum up his amendment.
Thank you, Provost. Can I just clarify, is it your intention for there to be a short comfort break now before a vote or following the vote? Because if it's now, I would have a conversation at least to see if we can reach some sort of consensus on some of this.
In the spirit of consensus, I'm happy to take a short comfort break now and see if we can reach a resolution that requires no vote. So we'll do that now. 5-minute comfort break, recess.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor, we are back in part 2 of full council, and Councillor Drysdale, we will come to you for your summing up of this item.
It's good that everybody's getting cake apart from me in this place. It's marvellous. Thank you, Provost, for the opportunity. There have been productive discussions. I don't think we're quite in a position of consensus, but I shall defer to the mover of the motion to sum up where we've got to.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. You're summing up.
Thank you, Provost. Just first and foremost, I wanted to just say that, you know, despite everything we've said today, fully backs up the excellent work undertaken by health and social care partnerships under what is extremely challenging circumstances. In relation to the 2 amendments, Councillor Forbes and I are happy to accept points 5 and 6 of the SNP amendment and point 2 from the Councillor Barrett's amendment to add into the motion. We disagree on the point 1 about declaring a health and social care emergency. There was some discussion as to whether that should just be a social care emergency. However, it was deemed competent as a health and social care emergency, so I'm planning to leave it as it is. So it would be points 1 to 4, plus 5 and 6, and our point at the bottom, which Council requests the Leader of the Council write to the Cabinet Secretary, would be joined by a second paragraph about writing to the First Minister, etc., as per Councillor Barrett's amendment. So, in effect, the difference would just be whether or not the declaration of a health and social care should be in the motion or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Peter Barrett, on the basis that yours has been incorporated, are you, not all of it, are you retaining your amendment as is? I was under the impression, no, right. Okay, thank you. And Bailey McLaren, you're content with that as well as the secretary? Thank you. Right, okay. But Councillor Drysdale, you and Councillor McCall are retaining your amendment on the single point of whether to declare a health and social care emergency. Is that correct?
That is correct, Provost, yes.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that.
Right, okay. So just to be clear for members, the point of dispute that the vote is over is whether to declare a health and social care emergency, and that is the sole point of disagreement now remaining in the chamber. So I shall hand over to Mr. Henry, who will do a roll call.
Thank you, Provost. So we had a motion by Councillor Duff and Councillor Forbes. We had a first amendment by Councillor Drysdale and Councillor McCall, and a second amendment by Councillor Peter Barrett and Bailey McLaren. The second amendment has been incorporated into the motion. So, as in addition to what the Provost has outlined, we now on the table have the motion by Councillor Duff and the amendment by Councillor Drysdale. So if we can ask members to confirm if they're voting for the motion or amendment. Bailey Hare.
Motion.
Councillor Allen.
Motion.
Councillor Anderson.
Motion.
Bailey. Councillor Liz Barrett. That was motion, Councillor Barrett. Thank you. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Amendment.
Councillor Chan. Councillor Chan, can you hear us online?
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Motion.
Councillor Donaldson.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Duff.
Motion.
Councillor Forbes.
Motion.
Councillor Frampton.
Amendment.
Councillor Freshwater.
Motion.
Councillor Harvey.
Amendment.
Councillor Illingworth.
Motion.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor Kogali.
Motion.
Councillor Lang.
Amendment.
Councillor McPherson.
Amendment.
Councillor Mayer.
Amendment.
Councillor Massey.
Amendment.
Councillor McCall.
Amendment.
Provost.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Amendment.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Amendment.
Councillor Rebeck.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion.
Councillor Shires.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Watt.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Amendment.
Councillor Welsh.
Amendment.
And Bailey Williamson.
Amendment.
Provost, we have 22 votes for the motion, 18 for the amendment, so the motion is carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item 8, the Heaton 1 to 5 High Street Hotel development. And I'd like to invite Serge Marone, Strategic Lead for Economy Development and Planning, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost. This report outlines the proposal from Log Terrace Limited to redevelop the Council's B-listed buildings at 1 to 5 High Street, which were declared surplus and vacated. Before I'm presenting a few slides provided by Log Terrace Limited, I would like to provide some background and clarification. Since 2011, the Council has explored potential uses for the buildings at 1 to 5 High Street, including housing, offices, and hotel. The Council decided that the best use was for a hotel development to secure the future of the buildings and wider economic benefits. The Council confirmed this preferred use in 2022 by selecting a preferred developer. As officers, over the past 15 years, we have implemented the Council decisions using our own expertise and expertise from external advisors. In 2019, we commissioned specialist industry research, which highlighted strong market demand for a high-quality hotel in Perth, as the provision was largely limited to budget and 3-star accommodation. In 2025, the position has not changed. The buildings at 1 to 5 High Street were identified as an ideal location due to their prominent position, attractive Victorian Gothic architecture, and scenic river views. Consequently, the site was marketed to attract a specialist developer capable of delivering a high-quality hotel. Given the complex layout and listed status of the building, the Council made clear to all prospective bidders that grant assistance will be available to support conservation and restoration. A preferred bidder was subsequently agreed by the council, including a grant of 1.9 million to assist with these works. For clarity, the grant will not be paid upfront. It will be released in stages as conservation and restoration progress. Ownership of the buildings will only transfer for £1 once all the works are completed, ensuring the council retains control of the asset throughout. For clarification, the reason of the transfer for £1 is that the buildings have a de minimis value, meaning that in its current state, it is considered more as a liability than an asset. Providing public funding to private companies is not unusual if there are wider public benefits. The council has previously supported local property owners to adapt their properties to regenerate our streets, but also businesses to introduce green measures to reduce carbon emission and grow. The 1.9 million grant for this project is to restore and conserve a significant listed building. It is ring-fenced as it will be funded through prudential borrowing and repaid by savings from the current mothball maintenance cost for 1 to 5 High Street. For clarification, the £143,000 figure referenced in the report reflects a 5-year average running cost estimated at the time of the report in 2020, and not the current mothball maintenance cost. The current mothball maintenance costs are lower at around 85,000, but will generate sufficient savings to cover the borrowing cost. Without savings to fund the borrowing cost, there is no grant. The reason why we are not remarketed the site following Henley Home Group dissolution is that the works involved to transform this empty listed building into a luxury accommodation require specialized skills, experience, and supply chain capability. The directors of Log Terrace Limited have all of these attributes, including practical completion of similar projects. They have also demonstrated their commitments by incurring significant costs to secure planning consent. Subject to due diligence and obviously council approval, it was therefore the most efficient way to deliver a solution at pace. Finally, and although not detailed in the report, it is important to note the anticipated wider economic benefits. These are in addition to securing the future of the buildings. The project will generate direct and indirect employment during both the construction and the operational phases. And although it's quite difficult to estimate the number of jobs, we can still provide some kind of estimate between 30 and 50 jobs. As well as DV impact, approximately 9 million during construction, including for local contractors, and around 1.5 million annually during operation via visitor spending in local restaurants, bars, shops, and culture and leisure venues. This development aligns with the council ambitions to attract higher value tourism and extending stays and support key existing investments such as the Perth Museum or Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, while encouraging further investment. I may now move into showing some of the slides which have been started to be shown on the screen. This slide is showing demonstrating the model which will be used for 1 to 5 High Street, which is obviously a city centre. It will have the ethos of a boutique hotel, even if it's not a fully restaurant and bars hotel. It will still provide some services. But what's important there is that it will use existing services around the hotel to serve the existing guests. If you want to move on. Here are some examples of some of the projects that have been completed by Log Terrace and its directors. All are listed, quite complex to do, and they are operating. In relation to Perth, the company is quite interesting in the sense that they try to use the DNA of the place, and that's what they've done in these few slides, showing the historic context for Perth, but also quite interestingly moving on to the architect of 125 High Street, Andrew Eaton, who has also been instrumental to develop quite a lot of different buildings across Perth and Kinross, including the St. Mary Monastery and so on. But to give that character and that local DNA that an hotel needs to attract guests. If we can move on. Again. I'm not going into the different plans. It is a 74 bedrooms, hotel. I want to insist on the delivery of the element. That was part of the due diligence. If we want to move on to the next one, and again, showing the core team. Yep. So you've seen that the main construction company will be Rich, and Rich has achieved a number of awards. But what's interesting in terms of delivery and a solution at pace to preserve the building as soon as we can is the core team is already in place in terms of contractor, architect, structural engineer, and mechanical and electrical engineer. Moving on, please. And as I mentioned in my introduction, the wider economic benefits will be quite tangible for the city, either through employment or extra additional spend in the area, as well as community involvement. And we know that the company and the directors particularly are keen to work with community groups to encourage social value in their development. That concludes my presentation, Provost. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Serge. First question is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Serge. I'm reasonably comfortable with all of this. The thing that worries me, and I'm looking for some reassurance from you on this one, Serge, is if we invest money into this building, how exposed are we? So just as an example, say the project went bust halfway through, is the money that we are putting into the building completely protected? So we can't actually lose that money. The worst case scenario would be we'd have a building that was in a better condition at that point than it is now. So our money's really been spent on our own asset, not on somebody else's asset. Hopefully my question makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Yes, totally. The grant will not be paid as one-off. It will be paid progressively as the works is obviously progressed, and as the conservation and restoration is progressed. And the ownership of the building will only transfer when the work is completed and the hotel is operating. So that means that the 1.9 million will be protected up to that point, and the money will have been used on the buildings. So the money will not go away because it's there. It will be in the brick and mortars of that building.
Thank you. Bailey.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask about specifically Appendix 3 in the document pack. We know that Loch Terrace were founded in 2023. Were Loch Terrace Limited the developer of all the schemes that are in that brochure, or is that more about the directors? And a quick second question, if I may. The 1.9 million, it strikes me that it's strange that everything else the council does that was priced in 2019 prices, we've incurred 30 to 40% construction inflation. Why is the 1.9 million not being increased with construction inflation? And do we still think this project is deliverable given that the heritage deficit was last assessed before all that construction inflation occurred? Thank you.
So there's a bit of overlap in terms of some of the buildings which have been developed and it's been shown on the pictures, because some of these buildings were effectively developed under Henley Homes Group, but by the same directors. But these directors are taking them to completion to make sure that they're operating. So there's a bit of overlap there. On the second part of your question, that's related to the valuability assessment for the project, and that's why in the conditions that we will put in the development agreements, we are looking at an update of that viability assessment, and that to be also assessed by a third party to make sure that the 1.9 million are still current, but there's no intention to increase that 1.9 million into that viability assessment.
Councillor Freshwater.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, it was just a bit of clarification, and I think from the discussion that we've had today, I'm kind of clear what the answer is. But the paper itself, it was just around the 1.9 million, because the way that I'm reading the paper is it doesn't actually ask council to approve that. It talks about the 1.9 million in the historical context in section 3.3. It then goes on to talk about it in future, but actually when you go to the recommendations of what council is being asked, it doesn't at any point actually say we are approving the 1.9 million. I know it's a piece of pedantry on my part, but I just wanted to clarify that that is in fact the case, that the 1.9 million, it may have already been approved when this first came to council many years ago. Could I just clarify that we are agreeing, because the way I read it just now, we are not approving the 1.9 million in this paper. But again, I may have just misinterpreted it, so I'm happy to be told otherwise. Thank you.
Yep, so just to be clear, the £1.9 million is already in the capital approved budget. Approval today will then allow us to release it in line with the milestones, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, convener. My question is that I understand that since 2008, the council has been paying for the maintenance and upkeep of the building, and that in deference to its historical and heritage, we are compelled to continue to do so, also for health and safety aspect. And I also believe that unless a purchaser is secured who would be willing to take on the necessary renovations inherent in a listed building, the council will continue to have to pay out for that maintenance. What I'd like to know is, can you give us an estimate of how much it has cost PKC in maintenance costs up until now? And what is the estimated annual saving to the public purse that could be made if this project went ahead and the building was restored and brought back into use? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So over the last 15 years, we've spent £300,000 on that building in terms of maintenance and unplanned. We're also incurring rates because we own the building. And as John Beveridge said earlier on, there's various health and safety compliance money that we're spending. But the paper also alludes to the fact that an average of £143,000 over the last 12 to 15 years. And that's what will go towards funding the potential borrowing for the 1.9 million. Should this be approved today.
Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Thanks, Provost. So I've voted once against this in 2020, and then in 2022 I was convinced it was a good idea on the back of the consultant's report, which, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Serge, when memory might not be as good as it used to be. But what changed my mind was that it was said that we were looking for high-end accommodation hotels, like your £500 a night sort of thing, to attract a different level of visitor into Perth. It was going to be the restaurants. We were going to have staff being taught how to get into hospitality. They would come down and work in there, similar to what was happening up at Dunalister. We were going to have, and I don't know if I've been afflicted by sitting next to Councillor Cuthbert, but the parking issue. For the 74 houses. I hate to be the one to raise it, but it was going to be concierge parking at some place further away from the boutique hotel that we were looking to get. What is coming forward today, and I think it'd be fair to say maybe it's technically correct to be calling it a boutique hotel. To me, and many members of the public and that, so I'd like your clarification on if you're still calling it boutique hotel, because I see that in the papers. It seems to me that as apartments, serviced apartments. Now, if you're always, all have heard about the benefit to the economy. These serviced apartments will be competing with the hotels we already have at a lesser price. So that will then reduce our hotel provision again if they're losing more residents. When the two hotels, the Station Hotel and the Queen's Hotel, come back into the possibility coming back into hotel accommodation, they will be competing against it. So all I'm hearing about is the positive thing about restaurants and that roundabout. I would like you to see what work you've done on the negativity that will do on existing businesses roundabout, if there is any.
So in terms of the nature of the development, you're right, there's been a change in terms of what we understand as a boutique hotel with full beverage and food and so on, which will not be the case here. But the market is changing also quite drastically over the past few years. And if you look at the type of stays, because remember what we try to achieve is extended stays from visitors. Research shows that that type of model is effectively encouraging people to stay longer in the area than a traditional hotel. So there's a movement in the market that we have to take into account to effectively to allow to meet the demand of the people coming, the visitors coming to Perth and Kinross. The starting point of having that offer and that opportunity to develop an hotel was that there was a lack of bedrooms and a lack of quality bedrooms in the area. And that's what we're trying to do. We try to improve the quality of the bedrooms in the area, which will be the case with that development. There will be effectively a higher offer in terms of quality that what we have, across, the board in Perth, because most of what we have at the moment are budget and 3 stars, provision.
Just to come back on that, yes, they are maybe budget and hotels. This is not a hotel, so you should be comparing it with the other apartment blocks we've got down at St John's and other ones that may be developed basically on an Airbnb sort of basis.
I take your point that, technically in the traditional terms, of hotel, but now the market has changed quite drastically, and guests are not making really a difference between a traditional hotel and other type of offers. So you have to look at what the market is offering. We have very good quality hotel in the area, but not necessarily in Perth City, not far. There's 1 or 2, but not necessarily in Perth City, and that's what we try to address, is the quality provision in Perth City.
Thank you. Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Provost. In section 4.5, it talks about essentially an independent viability assessment being commissioned through a third party. Specifically, that's looking at the overall project and ultimately assessing, as part of the project, some of the control mechanisms, the appraisal of the development and the various stage payments. Can I ask how we are managing that process in terms of our work with the developer, should this be passed, please? And I've got a second very quick follow-up question, maybe answer at the same time. A building, especially a building of this nature, is most at risk from fire and another significant catastrophe during construction phase. My understanding is we don't actually hand the building over from an asset until the building is completed. Can I ask what sort of oversight and mechanisms in terms of hot works, etc., will be used during that period to ensure the safety of the building? Thank you.
Okay, in terms of checks and balances, development appraisal will have mechanisms in relation to cost. It'll be independently checked by a chartered surveyor, somebody away from an internal valuer such as myself, and also from Loch Terrace. We'll look at the construction costs, so that'll be QS checked to look at the square meterage to say that it balances up. We'll look at the profit mechanism built in, which obviously will have an effect on the funding. That'll again be checked. We'll also then look at the end value. So the end value, you're looking the room rates, essentially, how much money the hotel's making in a year. That'll be then a capitalised figure of that amount to get an end value, a capital value on it. So we'll check that these figures have merit in terms of what the developer's saying. That will protect us against potential at a later date where, if the figures don't add up and the development stalls, that we can't say, oh well, we didn't check that out and where the market was at that particular time. So they're the main things in terms of the control measures. There's other important factors we need to look at as well in terms of development agreement and the completion certificates of the building. So we wouldn't be transferring title until all the necessary warrants are in place. Essentially, completion certificates on the build as such. I think an important point to make as well will be controlling the contractor spends. So we'll be looking for evidence that both national and local contractors have been paid for the works that have been done to the hotel. Any other questions? Yeah, I'll let John answer that for you.
So in terms of fire and hot work, so we would need to seek assurance that there are proper risk assessments and method statements in place, and that was all quality checked. So we would be looking at that right at the outset to establish the standard. The contractors and the developers will also have their own insurance, obviously, and that will all be checked as well right at the outset.
Thank you. Serge, if I can just quickly circle back, Councillor Lane, his question around the competition on existing hotel offer and the parking issue. Do you want to just quickly provide comment on those to avoid a further question?
Yeah, thank you, Provost and Councillor Lane. On the parking issue, obviously that was looked at through the planning application. So there has been, element which has been looked at. So I don't have the detail of how the park, but that would have been part of the planning application process to check, the impact on parking and traffic and circulation, for the hotel. In relation to the other element, I understand that they will have an impact on the market, because each time there's somebody creating a business, creating a new offer and goods and services, that has an impact on the market. But the market reacts to that impact usually. They are also private entities, and they are reacting to the market. And most of the time, they react to the market by investing into their goods and services, or by offering a different type of goods and services. So there will be an impact in terms of competition in some of the on the market, but that's up to the private entities to react to that competition.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern next.
Thank you. My question is on the last couple of lines on paragraph 3.9 and the diagram on appendix 7, which is the garages. Now, I suspect somebody's going to say you need to go and speak to the Perth Common Good Fund, but what do we use that garage for? And if it's used for storage and ES1, are we going to move that somewhere else? And if so, have we got the space to do that? And when it's finally built, will we have in the title deeds right of access to the garage if we maintain that garage?
So sorry, thank you for your question, Billy Aaron. In the paper, we obviously indicated that there was a request from Loch Terrace to, effectively have the garage part of the development as such, so that it has to go through the normal process because it was not covered by the original, decision. So they have to go through Perth Common Good Fund process, for that. My understanding is the car is not there yet. It's not there in that garage at the moment, but it was used for the car, and it's used for some storage of stages, which we'll have to find other ways of storing that element, but it's pretty much empty at the moment.
I can confirm the car is not there at the moment because it's broken, but it's also got alternative accommodation at the back of 2 High Street now, not in a garage, but outside.
So just the second part of that, are we going to ask for it to be maintained on the titles? We have a right of access.
So if through the process, the decision was effectively to include the garage in the disposal, there will be no need for a right of access because that would be part of the hotel. Yeah, that's what I mean. If we go through the process, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Collins, you're next.
Thanks, Provost. 2 questions, I think. The first one is on section 4.5, same as my ward councillor behind me, about the it's proposed to mitigate risks by requesting a full independent viability assessment by a third party. These are the financial risks we're talking about. Why haven't we done that up front so that it's available for us today? And could that independent viability assessment say that it's not viable, and therefore would you come back to us at that point?
The answer to your question is yes. If it comes back as not being viable, and we have a kind of viability gap in the whole project, we wouldn't be looking to proceed, but neither would they. They wouldn't be able to get the funding to be able to do it. Yeah.
And why have we not done that in advance?
We waited on the planning being put through, okay, and then we are looking now as we get closer to the date to undertake that.
Thanks. And my second question, I think, is for Mr. Walker. Just following up on Councillor Mayor's point about continuing to pay for the building if the project doesn't succeed. We are, of course, I think, taking out a Public Works Loan Board offer, and you've indicated to me it's 50 years. What would your expected annual payments be on the loan?
So 1.9 million is around about 90,000 pounds. As you know, it's 45,000 pounds per £1 million is what we account for.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Better, thank you, Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. My concern relates to the reputational risk of carrying out this transaction. In principle, I think Council agreed that Henley Homes would be the preferred bidder. We were told today that Henley Homes is in liquidation, as is all the group companies that belong to Henley Homes. I'm not convinced that we actually know who those companies are. I'm concerned that it could have an impact in terms of we've gone to this builder because they're experts in older houses, etc., etc. It may be that expertise was actually within the Henley Homes group rather than in Loch Terrace. And I'm really looking for some reassurance that officers are fully aware of what the impact of the liquidation of Henley Homes will be in terms of both the expertise and also the financial implications, because having looked online, it would appear there are huge, in the liquidations, there's huge numbers of unsecured creditors that are not going to get paid. So I don't know what the implication that's going to be. I'm just looking for officers to give me reassurance that we have got that covered fully, because it's not clear in the paper whether that's been done.
I think Mr. Walker and Mrs. Simpson, perhaps. Serge, do you want to start off?
I want to start with the expertise elements, because you're right. I think it's important that we understand where the expertise lies into these things. And effectively, the expertise for Henley Home Groups are sitting with the directors that have set up Loch Terrace. And what has been showed very briefly on the slides is the core team and the supply chain that they're bringing with them, including the construction company and the professional, in terms of architect and so on, which have delivered similar project, particularly the one in Glasgow and Cambridge recently for the similar type of complex building that we were talking about. So, and that's what we focused as well on our due diligence. It's not only about people and what expertise they are bringing, to the party. So that element of it, quite confident there's a capacity there to deliver as they are delivered in Glasgow and Cambridge. Yeah. For the other part, maybe.
So I'd just like to give assurance that Loch Terrace are a new organisation, so therefore they start from scratch, I think, in February 2023. The liabilities from Henley do not transfer to Loch organisation. As we discussed earlier on, Henley had problems for a specific set of circumstances. And I think that was articulated to the members that they were there earlier on. We've also demonstrated, we've seen accounts for Lock for the first couple of years that have been published, and those showed, the traditional direction of a new start company. We've had sight of the first 6 months of the current financial year, and you can see the signs of growth, the turnover rising, etc. So Lock are in the first 3 years of their development and showing signs of getting back to where Henley were.
Just in terms of the construction firm, my understanding is that the Lock Terrace will be using Reach CN, which is their construction firm now. But historically, I think it's been Henry Construct, I think it was called, and that's in liquidation. So what reassurance do we have that that expertise is actually existing within Reach CN?
So thank you for your question, Councillor Cuthbert. You could, in the some of the slides and so on, the Reach company has developed. It's a viable company. It has developed similar projects. They've won multiple awards in terms of these type of buildings. So I understand you comparing that with Henley, but we had to do the due diligence on what's in front of us and who will effectively deliver the project. And Reach is, having the attributes to deliver that project in terms of expertise and competencies.
Okay, Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. I have two questions. I'll just thanks for, they're both related to previous questions. One is Councillor Welch asked about the stage payments, and we had a useful kind of description of the standard way of assessing whether stage payments should be made or not. But I'd like to ask what will be built into that to link them to spending on the protection of the heritage, because that's what the 1.9 million grant is about. So it's not just about how much you've spent on the building altogether, it's what have you spent on the things we're actually giving you the money for.
Thank you. In terms of stage payments, we will, off the back of the development appraisal and the costs appraisal, work out an apportionment of these costs throughout the stages of the build. We will be monitoring, in terms of invoicing coming in, the works that are being undertaken. To measure these amounts directly into a building such as that against heritage, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. But I can rest assured that officers will do the due diligence in terms of the works that have been carried out to ensure the works have been done.
I'm thinking particularly in things like preservation of the panelling and the windows and the key items that we don't want to hand over more money than has been spent, or that has secured the value of those items. Thank you. Will I go on with my next question? That was relating to the questions from Councillor Lane concerned about the impact on the market for other accommodation in Perth. And my understanding of reading the opportunities that are presented by this is that, I think this is probably a question for Serge, that is our understanding from Visit Scotland and other organisations that having accommodation of this standard in the city will actually expand the overall market for bed nights in Perth by attracting visitors to stay who wouldn't currently consider staying in town because there is a lack of quality accommodation to put them in?
Thank you for your question, Councillor, about it. Yes, you're correct. And that has been highlighted since 2019, but it has been reiterated by people in the industry, including Visit Scotland, that there's a lack of high quality accommodation for people to stay. And for us, and Visit Scotland is trying to do that, Scotland-wide, is to extend the stay of the people coming to Perth. This is particularly I've said that the situation in terms of the provision has not really changed since 2019, but the demand has changed. Now we have the Perth Museum, which is attracting thousands of people to the city, and they not maybe have the accommodation they would like to have to stay another day. They may come and visit the museum and go somewhere else where they have more better quality accommodation.
Could I just add, as an extension to that, I just thought also it may make Perth City more attractive as a conference centre for use of the concert hall and theatre facilities if there's better accommodation.
I think that's mostly a comment, but I'm sure we'll just note that. And right, is that right? I'm sure Serge would say yes without putting words in his mouth. Moving on, Councillor Duff.
Thank you. If we didn't go forward with this proposal today and end up having to retain the asset and we can't find a buyer for it, could you give us an idea of what the cost would be to the council of refurbishing the building for some other commercial use?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Duff. So based on just the square meterage costs for doing like office refurbishment, which would be one of the options we would be considering, if you multiply up the gross internal floor area of the building by the square meterage rate, you'd end up with a cost of in excess of £11 million. So that's the magnitude of cost that you'd be looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Provost. In the text there, it asks about types of insurance that are in place for the project, and it talks about public liability, employers' liability, products, professional, etc., etc. When would these transfer over to the developer, and would that offer us a further significant saving?
Afternoon, Patrick Mayor, Legal Services. Responsibility for the insurance would transfer over to the developer on the grant of the development lease we're giving to them. So that's public liability and buildings insurance. And then obviously once they acquire the building on completion, they take on full responsibility. Yes, it would. Small, but that's some sort. Yeah, it will do. Yeah, absolutely.
It's more likely to be cost mitigation. Our insurance premiums are going through the roof. So if we can get an older building passed across, that helps with our discussions with our insurance company.
Thank you. Okay, I'm now on to a number of second questions round. Councillor Lane, you're first with the second question.
Thank you very much. I apologise for being impatient. It was following on from, what Serge, in this, I don't really like this discussion about good accommodation, bad accommodation, or not up to standard accommodation. We shouldn't be saying that about hotels in Perth because that's going to put people off. That's the first thing I'd like to say. And it's different types of accommodation. I also am uncomfortable, and I'm asking if we could be challenged on. Your answer was that these people in, say, the Mercure, the Royal George, the Queen's, the station, City Mills Hotel at Mercure, that they would have to up their game, in business to improve. And they turn around and say, well, you're given a building for £1 and you're given a grant to do up. If you do that to us, we could up our game. Are we, by doing this, opening ourselves up to challenge from competitors, if you want, over bed nights in Perth? Ones that have been around for a long time in Perth.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lane. I was avoiding naming hotel, in that discussion. So, I mean, there's an element about that. There will be. The difference here is, we own that building across the road, where we don't own the Salutation Hotel or the hotel you've named. So for us, it's about redeveloping a building for a use which will have wider economic benefits, and that's why as well that we are providing that financial incentive, is because to redevelop that building, it is difficult and complex, and you have this conservation and restoration constraints on that building.
To come back on that, I would think, I don't know about the listed building states, but I think the Station Hotel and the Mercure, that's the reason I listed these four, and the Royal George will have these status as well as buildings that have architecture that's got to be preserved. So they will have to make improvements, as you've suggested, that's happening across the road, but they've got no funding to give them assistance. And I'm wondering, can you give me assurance that there's no business, any question can become that we are favouring a business against another business that's in competition?
The main difference is we own the building on 1 to 5 High Street. We don't own the Salutation or the other building. So if a building, and I mentioned in my introduction that we've helped private property owners to improve their building through the Adapt Your Properties scheme. That's what we've helped them to improve their building. So they're perfectly able to approach us to see if we can help them through the Adapt Your Property scheme.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Welch. Your second question.
Thank you. We heard in terms of the current cost of that building being circa, I think, £85,000 a year in terms of cost to Perth and Kinross Council. Once the building is developed, I guess there will be a net income to Perth and Kinross Council through rates. Is there any indication with the investment in the building and the new use of the building what sort of indicative sums that might be? Thank you.
Yep. So just to be clear, there will be a non-domestic rates charge applied to the building. We don't know what that will be yet. The assessor, excuse me, the assessor will assess that at the time based upon the cost, etc., etc. There will not be a direct benefit to the council of the rates because it goes into the Scottish Government's non-domestic rates pool. So the overall pool across Scotland will be increased. We may see a benefit in the longer term, but not directly immediately.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. The Alistair Hotel. I believe there were photographs in the pack of the hotel. It was part of the Henley Homes Group, I believe, and is now in administration. My understanding is that the administrator says there's roughly £1.9 million worth of unsecured creditors. I'm wondering if the team know how much those unsecured creditors are local Perth and Kinross people, because I can see them being a little bit upset with us placing another contract with a company that's left them in the lurch. Do we know how much the unsecured creditors are for Perth and Kinross businesses?
Serge.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Cuthbert. I don't want to go into the detail of a liquidation or of the Homes Group, but I think we've heard in the previous session that there was a figure given, for that element, which was in the nature of 400k. I think that was what was quoted.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart, Colin Stewart.
Thanks, Provost. Just a couple of follow-up questions to some of the questions that have been raised. So first of all, Councillor Allen asked, I think, about the cost of refurbishment, and Mr. Beveridge, sorry, this is a question for you. Mr. Beveridge, you said it would cost £11 million to refurbish as office accommodation. My recollection is that back in 2022, when a similar question was asked, we were talking about a figure of £6 million. So I just wondered why that cost of refurbishment has nearly doubled while the heritage conservation cost hasn't changed since 2020, 2022 being a point by which most of the construction inflation had already happened.
So the costs that have been worked out are a very high level. That's the first thing to note. But they are based on the Building Cost Information Service, which is the industry standard for applying a rate to a building. If you consider the type of building its age, its listing, the fact that it's been vacant for considerable time, and its current condition, which is really significant. It's been left in the state that it's in for a number of years. So the cost is a simple calculation. You multiply the gross internal floor area by the rate, and the rate per square metre is £4,731, which is quite high. But given the condition of the building, that is proportionate to what the requirements would be.
Okay, thanks. And then maybe a question for Mr. Walker, just to follow up on the issue about the non-domestic rates. Do you know whether hotels are rated lower or higher than office accommodation for non-domestic rates?
The hotels received a benefit a few years ago on the back of COVID, where there was a national scheme to reduce the rateable value. There was a hospitality relief scheme. That is no longer in play. I'm sorry, going forward, I don't know how they would compare with office accommodation.
Okay, very final question, Councillor Cuthbert, and then we're moving into the debate stage.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just following up on Councillor Lang's point about the accommodation. I wasn't here when the original decision was made on this property, but my understanding was that there was a report brought to Council which said that there was a need for a luxury hotel, and this was the ideal location, and that's why the money and the scheme was pushed forward. I'm just wondering, do we not feel a sense of irony that what we're talking about now is a short-term let accommodation, which is effectively what I think it's going to be from what's been said? And is that not a touch of irony when we're trying to introduce a sort of short-term let zone, if you like?
Can answer the question. Thank you for your question, Councillor Cuthbert. As I said, the market has changed. People may not see that development as you see it. I think they may see it as a boutique hotel in their eyes, because it will be at a standard level which they will expect in the boutique hotel, even if it's a limited services. It will still be, there will be a 24/7 people there, so it's not like you have to find your key in the box, and there will be some service that will be available for the guest, although limited. But that's why other services will be sought from the other local businesses, which I'm sure will be keen to get into cooperation and working relationship with the new hotel.
Okay, thank you. That was the final question. We now move on to Councillor Drysdale. You're going to move a motion.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, we have had the opportunity today to hear from Mr. Usmani and officers about the proposal to redevelop the Council's B-listed buildings at 1 to 5 High Street. The proposed measures to be included in the agreement with Loch Terrace will protect the Council's and wider public interests. This will help us to continue to work in close cooperation with the developer and keep a close eye throughout the development. At the Council, we have been ambitious in creating a unique offering for people to live and visit. We have approved the Perth City Development and Design Framework to revitalise key areas of the city. This is a bold, long-term journey, and we have already celebrated significant milestones along the way. We have achieved the delivery of the magnificent Perth Museum, which has already attracted thousands of visitors. However, our current hotel accommodation provision falls short of meeting the expectations of today's visitors and those of tomorrow. To address this, we must unite public and private investment to deliver a solution that elevates Perth's visitor accommodation offering. And this project is a key step towards achieving that vision. In addition, we cannot afford to have a building to be at risk in a prime location. As we know through the example such as St Paul's Church, it could take years to develop a building, and these opportunities do not come up very often. This project will bring wider economic benefits through additional visitor spend in our local restaurants, bars, shops, culture and leisure venues, which will translate into additional income for our local businesses and residents, but also additional jobs, especially in the construction phase. Councillors, it is time for us to focus on our positive ambitions for Perth and Perth and Kinross and achieve another key milestone on our journey. And I move the report for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. You're being seconded by Councillor Rebeck.
Yes, thanks, Provost. The only thing I would add to the Leader's comments there and moving the paper is that whilst we've had some really good debate around this issue, you know, lots of really good conversation and a little bit of angst probably as well, quite frankly, I think we're left with a pretty binary choice here today. We're left with a choice of approving what could be a real exciting project, albeit with some degree of risk, as these things do, or we can leave the building empty, dormant, doing nothing, costing us money. So I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebeck. Bailey, you have an amendment.
Yep, I do. And I think committee services, you have a copy. I'll start to speak in any case. This is a tricky one because it doesn't pass the Clapham Omnibus test. It's very easy to throw stones at the notion of giving a private company nearly £2 million and giving them a building and giving them £1. This is very easy to throw stones at that idea, but we in this chamber have to get beyond that. We're compensated to spend time to grow our understanding of these matters and dig deeper than the person on the street might be expected to when they're criticising these things. So I want to be very clear that I understand fully that there could be circumstances under which the notion of giving a building to a developer, then paying them money to renovate it could make sense. I get that. However, we have to ask ourselves the question, is this the best way for Perth and Kinross Council to spend almost £2 million? This was initially about solving our problem with hotels in Perth. The data showed there was a problem that I'd call a missing middle. People in the industry that I've spoken to this week have reinforced that that's still very much the problem. There's not enough mid-market, good quality rooms that can be booked in bulk for conferences, and there's not enough accessible rooms. There's very little there's very little in the space between the Holiday Inn Expresses and the Premier Inns and the Glen Eagles and the Murray's Hall at the other end. And I don't see this proposal as solving that problem. Therefore, if we were to invest £2 million of taxpayer money on an intervention in the Perth hotel market, it should be to address that problem of the missing middle. That's the challenge that Perth's hotel market truly faces, and this proposal doesn't address that, so we need a rethink. So I wish to move the following amendment. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Bailey Brock, your second.
Thank you, Provost. I have got something prepared, but you know it's been a long day, so I'm really just going to finish off by saying yes, I'm happy to second Bailey's amendment.
Thank you. Your brevity is appreciated. Can you switch your microphone off? Thank you. Okay, I've got a number of people wishing to comment, so I'll come straight to comments. Councillor Frampton, you're with the first comment.
Thank you. Having the heating in Perth has the potential to transform and breathe new life into our city of Perth. Today we are faced with a choice. We can continue to pay a staggering £85,000 per each year for an unused building, a relic of the past that drains our resources without anything in return. Over the past decade, this has cost the council a significant sum, all to maintain a structure that serves no purpose. How much longer should we continue to do this? I realise 1.9k of listed building heritage funding is a substantial amount. This has to be funded to carry out the essential work to the building that we would be liable to do anyway. However, continuing year on year to pay £85,000 for upkeep of the building is not sustainable going forward. The heating can be more than just a place to sleep. It can also be a catalyst for change that attracts visitors and local residents alike. A hotel will not only create jobs, this could also encourage new businesses to fill our empty high street shops and invigorate our local economy and enhance our city's appeal. Instead of being deterred by the initial heritage funding, etc., we should focus on the potential it holds. Investing in this project, we are investing in a brighter future for Perth. I don't believe we should be wasting any more time or money on the maintenance of an unused building. Instead, I would prefer to embark on a journey to revitalise our community and make Perth a vibrant city once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frampton. Councillor Mayor next, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost. I would just like to say that I feel if we work successfully with this developer to the point where we do end up with a brand new 74-key hotel in the city, providing affordable luxury accommodation, but without the meal deals and the parking perks of other types of hotels, we may pick up tourists travelling to Scotland to major events in Scotland by train. We all know how expensive it is to stay in Edinburgh during the festival. This kind of accommodation could attract festival goers who stay in Perth, travelling back and forth by public transport. If that's the case, we could benefit from these tourists spending some time and some of their money in our city, which otherwise would have been spent in other cities and towns. Perth could and should benefit from this project, which will bring new visitors who may extend their stay in Perth and Kinross, and it will bring extra employment prospects and generate more money for our hospitality industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Councillor Donaldson next.
Provost, thank you. I do have some reservations, I think, like most members here, and there are risks. But I think you've got to remember there's no reward without some degree of risk. I do think council officers have carried out due diligence. They've assessed the risks as far as they possibly can and put in place potential mitigation measures and safeguards. There is risk, yes, but the greater risk in my mind is if we do nothing. That risk is inertia. That risk is failing to take action. We've heard from Scott Walker the cost of the 1.9 million on 50-year money, and that comes out at £85,000 per annum, thereabouts, the cost of interest payments and capital repayments over that period. What I think that's almost matched, I think now, by the cost of maintenance, but that figure on maintenance, on security measures, is going to increase almost inevitably over the years to come. I think that's a factor certainly to bear in mind. I think also, if we don't agree to this today, then what is the alternative? A building that deteriorates and declines over coming years. Are there a whole host of potential developers lining up? No, that seems clear. And I think even though there is a change in the hotel offering, the accommodation offering from what we had 5 years ago, I still think it's got attractions. I see Councillor Bailey's amendment. I'm not quite clear on his figures on our office accommodation. The cost there is of the order of just over 11 million. And would there be a taker for that accommodation? And the council has quite clearly deemed it to be surplus to requirements, and that's been the case since 2008. That was 17 years ago. I think the council's occupied the property to some degree since then, but it's 17 years ago. And, you know, given all the talk we've had over the last year about various quarters in Perth, not in particular a museum and art gallery, here we have a building that really can fit in to what we're trying to do in terms of our cultural offering and to attract tourism into Perth. I've no doubt we should, even though there's some reservations, I certainly do believe we should support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Lane next.
Again, I go back to, I've not really made my mind up on this because it's so difficult, and I've changed my mind before. I used to be indecisive, but now I'm just not sure. What I would like is the leader of the council to apologise for talking down our offer in his speech. There'll be no new, whatever happens with this building, there'll be no new hotel rooms or short-term let rooms in Perth over this summer. And to say that the offer is not good enough in Perth or words to that effect in a speech in a public arena, I think for somebody who's not just the leader of the council, but the leader of economy and infrastructure, was a mistake. And I hope it doesn't have a detrimental effect on our economy, on our our hospitality for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Provost. I did a little bit of digging last night, and it didn't take me long to find that we've been talking about this since 2014, way before most of us were here as councillors. It's just gone on and on for far too long. We have to just take the decision, grasp this nettle and dispose of this building and start to save ourselves some money. And I've had two people in my ward have written to me, and I know they've also written to Bailey, and I emailed them both back and said, if someone comes along with an amendment which is new, which is unique and which is costed and which is feasible, then I would absolutely give it my support. But what we see in this amendment is just the same old stuff that we've talked about time and time before. We don't need any more offices. It's not suitable for housing. We've got a building that's costing us money, is going down in value. I absolutely support the principle of getting rid of this building and hopefully stimulating the economy of Perth.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Collins, Stuart.
Thanks. The last paper we considered was, the last motion we considered was regarding the dire state of the public finances in terms of adult social care specifically. Councillor Lang helpfully pointed out that the IJB had been underfunded from the start. The next paper we're maybe about to consider is proposing a nearly 50% increase in council tax over the next 6 years. Members in this chamber know what the public reaction to this proposal is. We're the stewards of their money and they don't want it spent in this fashion. So for Councillor Donaldson and Councillor Frampton's benefit and Councillor Mayor's benefit, just to point out that £85,000 a year of borrowing over 50 years is £4.25 million. People in Perth and Kinross are going to be paying for the heritage work on this building that we're about to hand over to a private company for 50 years. Nobody in this, well, very few people in this chamber are going to see the end of that Public Works Loan Board. Public Works Loan Board debt. This will stick in the craw of Perth and Kinross taxpayers. We know what their view is on it, and we have a duty to implement that. Bailey's amendment comes up with practical suggestions, which in actual fact could return money to the council rather than hemorrhaging it away for 50 years.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Duff next, please.
Thank you, Provost. As you'll recall, this proposal originally came forward under the previous Conservative administration back in April 22, when we supported its development as a boutique hotel by the Henley Group. Like a number of members, I attended a briefing on this revised proposal a few weeks back and heard from the directors of Loch Terrace, the proposed new developers. I felt that their explanation of the issues which had beset the Henley Group were a well-explained, honest and transparent appraisal of the situation. I'm further comforted today by the assurances delivered by our officers in terms of the due diligence process and the Council's retention of ownership of 1 to 5 High Street until the project is complete. Back in 2022, we had a full and in-depth debate about the conservation deficit within the development of this Category B listed building and the reasons why a grant was needed to complete the deal. That conservation deficit still exists, and without the grant, which will be covered by the savings to be made, this building will remain a costly, unwanted and unneeded council asset. I very much hope that the councillors present today have the courage to be ambitious and seal this deal. The Hayton will be a further heritage attraction and a much needed quality 74-bedroom hotel for the City of Perth, which fits well with our desire for the economic growth of the city. I have considered the options listed in the amendment, but cannot support any further delay in relation to this building. The options of affordable housing and the refurbishment as offices would be immensely costly, and the one thing we do not require as a council is more offices or desk space, as a walk through 2 High Street would tell us. I agree with the council leader. It's time for us to display our ambition for the City of Perth. I will therefore be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Provost. Firstly, I'd like to commend Councillor Frampton on their excellent contribution to today's debate. Secondly, I'm getting kind of increasingly nervous about agreeing with Angus Forbes and John Duff twice in one day. Perhaps matters be set to right with the next paper. We'll just need to wait and see. As others have said, the 1 to 5 High Street office saga has gone on for far too long, and some of us have been here throughout the whole dreadful story. It has been a prickly thorn too. Difficult to grasp for a number of administrations, sometimes for reasons of sentimentality, sometimes for wishful thinking, and for too much value being placed on a few historic artefacts that too few people have had access to. Another big recurring issue has been the inability of councillors to match words with actions when it comes to getting rid of old building surplus to requirements, the sort of flip-flopping that Councillor Lang described. And maybe in some cases it's simply because some councillors don't want to see big money spent in Perth, but seem quite happy to see the hidden costs of buildings maintenance to be a perpetual drain on council resources. And if you do a few bits of arithmetic, then 17 years at 140,000 a year comes to well over the 2 million or the 1.9 million. How long has we as a council spoken about Perth's need for 4-star hotel and visitor accommodation? It's got to be 20 years, 30 years, even longer. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of what a dictionary or legal definition of a hotel is. Accommodation trends change, as we've heard, and we need to be able to adapt to move with the times. Councillors, we do need to see the bigger picture, which is that we've got a shovel-ready project which could start as soon as next February, a hotel operator with a proven track record of converting historic and heritage buildings of significance into high-quality hotel accommodation. Sadly, some people want to throw that away on the say-so of the social media chattering classes and the naysayers, the council's I-wrong brigade, the people for whom nothing we ever do will ever be right. Others want us to go down the tried and tested and failed routes of the past once again, to look at unfeasible options, the creation of office space that we don't need, a delusional belief that if we build it, they will come, despite the experience that we've seen in how protracted and complicated the negotiations have been to share the accommodation in Pooler House. Some people are floating the idea of affordable housing conversion. As one particular Danish brewer might say, probably the most unaffordable social housing in the world. It is cloud cuckoo land stuff. And I'm not saying that there are no risks associated with pursuing the Loch Terrace development, and the report doesn't say that either. It assesses the risk as medium, or one of the risks as medium, and we need to mitigate and manage the risks, not approach the subject like some naive Pollyanna. But neither can we be hamstrung by indecision and an obsession with perpetual equine dental examination. What I am saying is, and I have confidence in the due diligence that is being conducted by the safeguards that are built into the process. the retention of title and ownership throughout the construction phase until completion of the hotel, the staging of payments to agreed milestones in the delivery of the heritage works, and the evidence and reassurance of proof of payment to subcontractors. Are we going to let another opportunity pass us by? Are we going to repeat the mistakes of our forefather councillors, the one who said that we didn't want a lot of young people and students cluttering up Perth, let Stirling have Scotland's then newest university? Are we going to be like the complacent councillors, the ones who allowed Perth to miss out on city status in 2000 and 2002, allowing Inverness and Stirling to steal a march and investment over us for the next 10 years? Are we going to make perfection the barrier to progress? Or are we going to grasp the nettle, demonstrate leadership and vision and ambition to deliver what our city needs, the jobs, the visitors, the economic benefits that come with it? I'll be supporting the recommendation of the report and the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ballard. Councillor Welch, please.
Well, follow that. Thank you. Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Peter, for putting in many words, I think, what a lot of people are thinking. I put myself forward for election to be a councillor to make a positive difference in Perth and get things done. This administration, I think, is trying to work across the political spectrum to essentially attract £11 million of investment into Perth to transform an empty once proud building with a new use. It was historically a council chamber, and during the piece has been used for many things. It will, for a period of time, hopefully be used as a very successful hotel. Then who knows in another 50 years' time. But the point is, we're safeguarding that building and ensuring as an asset for the people of Perth, the restaurants, the high quality restaurants, and hopefully to enhance the nightlife of Perth. I absolutely welcome the investment, and I hope that what should be an obvious decision and a brave decision for someone is taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Welch. We'll now come to Bailey for his summing up.
Thank you. I'll be brief in summing up. I think it's regrettable we've gone past 5 p.m. because I was minded to go round the corner to Perth Trophy Centre actually and order wee brass plaques to sit behind you, Provost, to record all of the emergencies that we're declaring in this chamber, because we seem very good at declaring them then forgetting them. I think it was less than a year ago that we admitted there was a housing emergency and that any disposals would first of all be considered for housing before any other purpose. So let's hope that the health and social care emergency is remembered for a bit longer. And with that, I hope people will support my amendment, which would see housing options brought forward for the building opposite this one. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Bailey. We now move on to Councillor McEwen. You have a point of clarification. Really, I'm not actually...
10 seconds.
Yeah, okay, very, it's not really...
As a council, we have never declared a housing emergency.
Okay, thank you. I think Bailey's point was in relation to the disposals policy, which was changed to prioritise the disposal of buildings for affordable housing. So I think that's what he meant. And there has been discussions about having a housing emergency. Right. Leader of the Council, summing up, please.
Thank you, Provost. I really welcome this opportunity to secure significant private inward economic investment into Perth and Kinross. And as has been indicated earlier today, this is just the latest example of many similar cases where we do marry up private and public money to deliver real progress in terms of changing our city. It's a long process, we all know that, but what I hope we are about to do today is to deal with one empty building, one of many, sadly, but it's absolutely the right step along the way. As I said earlier, we are looking to deliver choice to visitors to Perth and Kinross. and by this model that is now hopefully to be taken forward, we are doing that, and we are giving more choice to the visitors. So without any hesitation, although like Councillor Donaldson, I had concerns earlier, my concerns have been assuaged by the advice and the information that we have all received. And I very much look forward to seeing this development get off the ground in the spring, and hopefully to be open in 2027. And I therefore absolutely move this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. Members, we're dealing with item 8 on the agenda, a joint report by the Strategic Lead Legal and Governance and the Strategic Lead Economy Development and Planning. We have a motion by Councillor Drysdale, seconded by Councillor Rebeck, to agree the report recommendations. We have an amendment by Bailey, seconded by Bailey Brock, the terms of which were shown on the screen. When I ask members to vote, can they confirm if they're voting for the motion or the amendment? Bailey Ahern.
Abstain.
Councillor Allen.
Motion.
Councillor Anderson.
Motion.
Bailey.
Amendment.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Bailey Brock. Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Motion.
Councillor Forbes.
Motion.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Freshwater.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Motion.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor Kogali.
Motion.
Councillor Lang.
Abstain.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Mayer.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Provost.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion.
Councillor Shires.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Watt.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Councillor Welsh.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Provost, we have 31 votes for the motion, 6 votes for the amendment with 2 abstentions, so the motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 9, the Medium-Term Financial Plan 2026-2032. Scott Walker, the Chief Financial Officer and Strategic Lead for Finance and Business Support, is going to introduce the report. If you could be quiet, please, while Mr. Walker introduces the report.
I normally start with good afternoon, councillors, but good evening, councillors. I'm pleased to present the medium-term financial plan. I'm pleased to present the medium-term financial plan for 2026 through to 2032. This plan is simply not a set of numbers. It's a strategic response to the changing needs of our communities and the realities we face as a council. It is designed to ensure that despite significant financial pressures, we continue to deliver on our priorities and protect the most vulnerable across Perth and Kinross. The council can no longer afford to deliver services in the same way. In setting next year's budget, elected members will determine how best to apply limited resources against the council's strategic priorities and consider different and innovative approaches to meeting the needs of local communities. Let me begin with demographics, as these are one of the most important factors impacting on our finances. The latest National Records of Scotland projections show that our population is set to increase by over 12% by 2047, reversing previous forecasts of decline and placing unprecedented demand on our care services, housing and support for communities. However, it is the composition of this growth that is the most striking and most challenging for us as a council. The number of residents aged 85 and over is projected to rise by almost 140% over the next 25 years. The population aged 66 and above will increase by nearly 43% by 2047. In contrast, the number of children is expected to fall by about 6%, and the working age population will see only modest growth. This means we're facing a future with a much older population and a significant rise in those who may require complex health and social care. At the same time, we're also seeing a rise in children with additional support needs. Currently, around 42% of school-aged children now require some form of extra help, which is up 3% since last year. These trends are not just statistics, they translate directly into increased demand for council services, from health and social care to education and housing. Our financial planning must be agile and responsive to those realities. The plan models the impact of these demographic changes, not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of the complexity and cost of the services we will need to provide. This medium-term financial plan also includes an updated council tax strategy. The council tax strategy is a cornerstone of our approach to financial sustainability and protecting frontline services. As a working assumption for financial planning purposes, this update proposes a 9.5% increase in council tax for 26-27, followed by annual rises of 6% through to 31-32. In 26-27, a 9.5% increase equates to an additional £2.81 per week, or £146 per year for a Band D property. These increases are projected to generate an extra £12.2 million in 26-27, with further annual increases which will support our ability to invest in frontline services. Table 9 on page 1730 of your pack sets out what proposed increases could mean to a Band D council taxpayer on an annual, monthly and weekly basis for all 6 years. So why are these increases necessary? Without them, we would face even more severe cuts to the services that our residents rely on most: social care, education, anti-poverty initiatives and support for vulnerable families. Council has already approved the application of 1.25% of council tax income towards borrowing costs to support the capital budget. This will ensure that we can continue to use our capital fund to invest in critical infrastructure projects that will benefit our community. The council tax strategy is designed to protect frontline services, especially for those most greatest in need, support investment in transformation and innovation, reduce our reliance on reserves, ensuring long-term financial sustainability, and provide flexibility to respond to changes in government funding or local priorities. It is important to stress that the actual level of council tax will be set each year by you in council, allowing us to respond to any changes in funding or local circumstances. The strategy gives us a clear planning framework but retains democratic control and flexibility. We're also committed to fairness and equity. Over 63% of dwellings in Perth and Kinross are in bands A to D, meaning a significant number of households will see a lower increase than the figures I quoted earlier. Colleagues from local taxes and welfare rights will continue to work with residents to support them in accessing benefits and maximising the discounts and exemptions that they're entitled to. Our financial modelling is built on clear, evidence-based assumptions. We've modelled 3 scenarios: optimistic, mid-range and pessimistic, across all major cost drivers, including pay and non-pay inflation, demographic pressures and government funding. The mid-range scenario assumes a 3% annual pay increase, inflation tracking Bank of England forecasts, and a modest annual increase in population and council tax base. As staff costs represent around 50% of the council's net revenue expenditure, there's a significant financial risk related to pay inflation. Each 1% movement on pay awards for all staff groups is approximately £3 million now. The mid-range scenario assumes no increase in core Scottish Government revenue funding over the 6-year period to 31-32. The assumptions used in updating the medium-term financial plan are set out in Section 8 and Appendices C to the report. All assumptions, including those on council tax, are for modelling purposes only. The mid-range scenario shows potential budget pressures totalling £70 million over the 6-year period to 31-32. Beyond these assumptions, there are also significant risks that we need to be aware of. Uncertainty over future Scottish Government funding, inflation and pay awards may exceed our assumptions, putting further pressure on budgets, and demographic change, especially the rapid growth in the oldest age groups, will increase demand for complex and costly services. The plan sets out a disciplined approach to managing these risks, including regular review and refinement of our assumptions, a continued focus on transformation and efficiency, and a commitment to transparent reporting. The Council expects to be notified of its provisional grant settlement for 26-27 in mid-January, which is around 6 weeks later than normal, and I'll be providing a briefing to all elected members once this information is available. When we fully understand the implications of the Local Government Finance Circular, I'll be able to confirm whether our position is better or worse than our assumptions. With information on actual levels of funding, elected members will have the opportunity to make the final decision on the 26-27 council tax on the 4th of March, when you set the 26-27 final revenue budget. At the same council meeting in March, I will ask you to set indicative council tax levels for 27-28 and 28-29. Again, council will have the opportunity to confirm these final levels in February 27 and February 28 respectively. I need to stress that all of the council tax increases within this report are for financial planning purposes only. The final decisions on levels of council tax will be taken by elected members as you set the final revenue budget each year. And just as the council did last year, there will be the opportunity to move away from the assumptions in the medium-term financial plan. Importantly, when the council does set the final tax each year, we will be in a more informed position as we're aware of actual levels of Scottish Government funding and more up-to-date budget pressures. In summary, this medium-term financial plan is a robust and realistic response to the challenges facing Perth and Kinross. It is designed to protect vital services, support our most vulnerable residents, and ensure the long-term financial sustainability of the council. Endorsement of this council tax strategy will not mean a reduced focus on transformation and change. The council has an approved transformation and change strategy, and officers remain committed to its delivery. The plan is grounded in evidence and shaped by the needs of our communities to deliver on the council's strategic priorities for the people of Perth and Kinross. Happy to take questions, Provost.
Thank you, Mr Walker. First question is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Provost. Scott, can I draw your attention to page 1712 of our document, and it's section 5.15. One of the lines says, combined with higher UK-wide tax receipts, suggests limited scope for significant increase in funding. I would have thought that higher tax receipts would surely follow through the Barnett consequentials to actually give us more money.
So my understanding is that with the different tax regime up in Scotland, because the tax thresholds are frozen at a UK level, that means that there's less of a transfer up to, as part of the Barnett formula, to Scotland. But I think there were other measures that were included in the budget that might offset that position. But that's my understanding of the impact of the UK-wide tax compared to the Scotland-wide tax take.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Scott. It's two very quick questions related. So, including this year's 9.5% tax and what you've proposed in your medium-term financial plan for the next 6 years, is that about compound up to about a 60% increase in council tax for the residents of Perth and Kinross?
So I do know that the 6 years of this plan equates to a 46% compound rate over the 6 years. So if you add in the current year, 9.5%, it's probably going to be 56, 57%. I'd need to do the calculations, but I know the 46% is the 6 years beyond of this financial plan.
Yeah, when it's compounded up as 60, because obviously 9.5's in the first year, so it compounds up. And obviously you will know that. Sorry. The second thing is, I'm really surprised that you've set this out for 6 years when at any time we can change it. Why don't we just change it now? You know, why don't you ask us to set it now instead of doing it for your financial planning for 6 years, but you were telling us that we can change it in 2 months, 3 months? It seems a long term to set out for something that can be changed, and you were making very big play on the fact it can be changed by elected members at any time.
So if I turn to 26-27 in isolation, there's two big pieces of our financial jigsaw missing. First of all is the response to the Plan B measures that should go out today as part of the integration joint board papers, and also the funding amount that we will get advised of around about the 13th of January. That could go well, it could go not so well. They will have significant impacts on the budget the provisional budget I bring back to council on the 4th of March. So that's why there'll be an opportunity to revise that then when we have more certainty.
Sorry, Provost, but I was talking about the 6-year part of it. You know, I can understand this year we could change that and the budget. The problem with it being at 9.5%, it gives elected members very little chance to have officers' input to give us a range of choices. So I was wondering why you've gone to 6 years.
So it's just to be consistent with the medium-term financial plan. Our auditors are looking for us to push out our longer-term financial planning. In my opinion, this was a missing part of our longer-term financial planning because we were only, up until last year, it was only the first 3 years we took for council tax strategy. This completes that circle, if you like. And as we say, we will amend it as we get more information. But that's what we use for financial planning purposes, modelling purposes only.
Okay, Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Provost. Thanks for the report, Chief Finance Officer. It was page 1710 of the document pack. The section 5.4 on inflation and monetary policy and the projections between 3.4 and 3.7%. What are the longer term projections for inflation from the Bank of England? Because I've noticed that you've got lower numbers in the later years in Appendix C.
So I think the expectation of the Bank of England is that to get down to around 3% by mid-2026, and you'll see that on the graph on page 1719 of your pack. We've modelled 3% as the mid-range for our inflation for purposes going forward, with slight variations in terms of the pessimistic and optimistic ranges.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Convener Provost. Can I ask, what is our current expected reserves position, both just now and at the end of March 2026? I think we were looking at potentially 2.5% just of our budget. Is that right?
So I think in the last update to financial resources last week, a couple of weeks ago, it was 2.4% is what we were projecting. And that's at the lower end of our range between 2 and 4% of our approved reserve strategy.
Thank you. Will I just go ahead with the other question? Yeah. And the other thing is I noticed sections 11.11 and 11.15, I'm not quoting the page numbers, they're far too long. They both refer to the need for more cuts. So can you give an indication now of what level of cuts we're already looking at for 26-27 if we stick to the 9.5% increase? Thank you.
So we are working with all budget review groups in terms of our financial modelling. Council will be aware of the pressures around about social care. We're also experiencing some extraordinary inflationary pressures around about some of the services that we provide. So we are potentially looking at up to £10 million of additional cuts beyond the 9.5%. Sorry, without any mitigation measures. That's gross.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I'm just taking in this number. I'm doing my newsletter piece at the moment, just trying to finalise it. I'm running late as usual. But am I going to put into that this council's proposing to put up council tax by 60% over the next 6 years? Is that really where we're heading?
So I think what you're maybe putting in there is the medium-term financial plan is assuming that, and I need to check the figure of 60% because I've not worked that out in the top of my head, but we are planning internally as officers for those ranges, and we will model those going forward if the council accepts the report before you today.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, and therefore I'm going to come to Councillor Drysdale to move the report. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your questions and answers.
Thank you again, Provost. Today we are asked to endorse our updated medium-term financial plan through to 2032, and crucially, the council tax strategy that supports it. This council has a reputation for strong financial management, which councillors across the chamber have repeatedly praised over the 8.5 years I have myself been an elected member. Just last week, indeed, at Audit and Risk Committee, Audit Scotland commented that our budget setting and financial management arrangements operated effectively and appropriate arrangements are in place for financial stability. Sustainability. The medium-term financial plan sets out the broad direction of travel for the council. It includes high-level commentary on the macroeconomic conditions that may influence public sector funding over the medium term and the best estimates available at the time. Assumptions informing Mr. Walker's commentary will undoubtedly be reviewed and refreshed between now and when we set the final revenue and capital budgets each year. The regular review and update of our medium-term financial plan is key to us maintaining that strong financial management, as Mr. Walker has indicated. The case for action is straightforward. Demand is rising, as we've heard earlier today. Demand is rising fastest where our duty is greatest. Perth and Kinross will see sustained growth in older age groups over the life of this plan, with the 85+ population expected to continue to rise. That brings more complex care needs, longer-term conditions, and higher costs per package of care. We have already had to respond this year. 6.7 million of recurring funding was added to social care and, just in October there, up to 4.18 million of non-recurring support was applied to meet real demand in the system. That is not abstract. It's about making sure people are safe at home, supported in their communities, and cared for when they need us most. Inflation, pay, and service-specific pressures will outstrip grant. Without prudent choices, the mid-range outlook shows a cumulative gap of around £70 million across the 6-year period. We cannot responsibly bridge that by cutting deeper into the very services that protect the vulnerable, nor by relying on one-off reserves to fund day-to-day activity. Colleagues, we are well aware of the exceptional financial pressures faced by Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board, and that as matters stand, these pressures are predicted to grow. Indeed, Council has debated and agreed its position on this issue just a couple of hours ago. Our proposed council tax strategy is therefore measured and honest. For planning purposes, and for planning purposes only, we are asked to endorse a 9.5% increase in 2026-27, as was provisionally agreed last year, and indicative rises of 6% in each of the following 5 years. Importantly, each decision will be reviewed and either confirmed or adjusted annually at budget setting, starting on the 4th of March 2026. For the avoidance of doubt, Council is not deciding the 26-27 council tax today. That will happen on the 4th of March and will be informed by the Scottish Government budget settlement, which we find out about on the 13th of January. This proposed financial plan also keeps faith with the multi-year approach members supported last year and maintains the policy of applying 1.25% of council tax each year to loan charges, protecting essential capital investment in roads, schools and community facilities. So what does this buy? Well, it protects frontline services focused on those in greatest need. Last year, adopting a multi-year strategy allowed us to sustain 6.7 million for social care, as I've said, maintain almost 2.2 million for teaching capacity, and provide over 400,000 for children and families at risk, and £2 million to our anti-poverty reserve, and also invest £750,000 in technology and artificial intelligence to redesign services while reducing our reliance on one-off fixes. This updated plan continues that discipline that was robustly promoted under Councillor Laing's leadership. We do not fund recurring activity from reserves. We prioritise prevention and transformation, and we keep our finances sustainable so that services are there when residents need them. The Economy and Infrastructure Committee in January will consider reports on our roads and bridge structures. We know that increased investment in this area is necessary over the term of this financial plan, and we want to be able to do this, but it needs to be funded without impacting on other essential services. We recognise the ask of households, and we will be fair. 63% of homes in Perth and Kinross are in bands A to D, and for a band D household, a 9.5% change, if that were to happen, would equate to £146.02 per year. Many pay less than that figure. For those who need help, our local taxes and welfare rights teams will continue to promote discounts, exemptions, and the council tax reduction scheme, and we will work with anyone who is struggling to pay. Colleagues, we are all aware, we've heard it very often in this chamber, that the council's performance in this area is excellent. We will make our messaging clear and accessible. How council tax is calculated, where the money goes, and what we are doing to support people through the cost of living crisis. Members, this is a decision about values as much as numbers. We can face the costs associated with rising demand with deeper, damaging cuts that may very reluctantly have to fall on core services. We really do not want to go there. Or we can back a measured, multi-year council tax strategy that protects vital services, sustains transformation, and keeps our finances resilient in what is clearly an uncertain funding environment. In my view, the second choice is the responsible one. It keeps people safe, preserves local services, and gives officers the clarity to plan and deliver. I commend the report and invite Council to endorse the medium-term financial plan and the council tax strategy it sets out. This is a plan rooted in realism and fairness, designed to protect and support those in greatest need and sustain the services our communities rely on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Drysdale has used up basically all of your chaired 10 minutes, but if you want to say a few brief remarks, I will let you, as you formally second.
Promised, I'm conscious it's 5:45, so yeah, fair enough. Like the council leader, I do want to thank Scott Walker and his finance team for all the work they've done. I think Eric has covered so many of the challenges, uncertainties we face over the next year and beyond, not least in demographics and social care, age structure of the population. But the two key uncertainties are going to be the IJB next Wednesday, and also clearly the Scottish budget on the 13th of January. I would just mention on transformation, I think it's absolutely crucial we keep pushing forward on that front. I think we've got to continue with pace to deliver efficiencies, economies going forward, and I suspect there will be more projects on that front to come. On the indicative, and they are, can't be stressed, indicative council tax figures, we are not setting the actual rate just now. It is broadly assumptions with an overall financial framework, and the actual decision is taken on the 4th of March, not today. I urge you to back this, the MTF. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Collins-Stewart, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, Committee Services have I think the latest copy of the amendment, if they could put that up on screen. My issue, I think, is with the future years proposed council tax rises contained in this medium-term financial plan. These proposed council tax rises are going up by far more than the general public's pay packets are. We've already heard today about the cost of living crisis. These proposed council tax levels in future years will do nothing to help that. Councillor Drysdale makes the point about the funding for the IJB, but that is a position across the country, and it underlines the point that Councillor Lang made, and which was one of the first things that I learned when I first sat on the IJB in 2018, that the IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership had always been underfunded since their inception. Just as the Scottish Government has been underfunding us as a council for years, particularly given the rurality that Councillor Drysdale himself mentioned earlier. So I would like to propose that we have in the first year a council tax assumption for council tax rises of 7.5%, which would comprise 3% specifically for social care, 3.25% to support general inflation, and the already agreed 1.25% to support the capital fund. That reduces to 3.75% in the 27-28, which would be 2.5% for general inflation and 1.25% for the capital fund. And in the later years, we reduce it to 3.25%, being 2% to support general inflationary increases in line with the projections of the Bank of England and the mid-range assumptions, I think, in the maybe the optimistic assumptions in Appendix C, and 1.25% again to support the capital fund. This will mean that officers will have to bring forward proposals for a wider range of savings in later years, but that will only help elected members if we have more of a wider suite of options to choose from when we're making difficult decisions about the future provision of council services. But it will also require acceleration of transformation in both the Perth and Kinross Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership. I know from all of the presentations that we've had about this, the reports that we've had about this, the engagement I've had with staff about transformations, that our staff are definitely up for that challenge, and therefore I commend this motion to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Cuthbert, you're seconding.
Thank you, Provost. Having been sat here for almost 9 hours with half an hour off for good behaviour, I'll keep this fairly brief. I'd rather not report a 60% increase over the cumulative increase over the next 6 years. And basically, I think it's wrong for us to put these sorts of figures out there because it'll cause panic with some of our poorer people, shall we say. So I second this motion quite happily.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cuthbert. Bailey McLaren, you have the first comment.
Yeah, is it appropriate to comment just now on the paper? Comment on
whatever you like.
Right, thank you. Well, I do agree with the comments just recently made there by Councillor Collins-Stewart about consistent underfunding of health and social care and local councils from the Scottish Government. The impact is stark. We can see this, it's contained in these papers. However, we do not yet know the level of the settlement from the Scottish Government. The figures are indicative. We have not yet set the council tax. We will be doing that later at a further council meeting in end of February, March. I I don't find these figures, these percentage figures, palatable either, but this is the reality that we are facing, handed to us by the SNP Scottish Government. So it's a pain I don't want to take, but for the sake of the next 6 weeks or so, I will vote with the recommendations of the paper in the hope that we can set a slightly lower council tax for our residents. Thank you.
Okay, Bailey next, please.
I removed mine, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Provost. This report moves us away from a cost of living crisis and steadily towards a cost of council tax crisis. I really do hope that our joint motion, as passed earlier and agreed, has a really positive reception by the Scottish Government. Surely then we can start to negate the need to increase our council tax so highly. The good people of Perth and Kinross are already struggling. If our medium-term plan numbers are correct, these figures will not offer any immediate hope for our residents. I wish the leader of the council well in his endeavours with the First Minister and the Scottish Health Secretary. The need for success has never been more apparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Provost. These are awful figures. No matter what you say, they're dreadful figures that are in this report. I don't want people in Perth and Kinross to think that we're living in some sort of bubble. A council is a monopoly. A council can actually set a price, and you can't move elsewhere. You've got to pay it. That applies to council tax. As a country, we've made so many bad decisions in the last number of years. When you think about it, we lost so many well-paid financial jobs through Brexit. We're losing our oil and gas industry. We're losing our chemical and petrochemical industries. And as a country, we're getting poorer and poorer. And people I speak to say they're struggling. All their energy costs are rising. All their costs are rising. Even things like insurance are going through the roof. And what are we doing? We have a cost of living crisis, I'm told, and I believe it's true. We are not being the solution. We are actually being the problem. We have to be seen to be listening to what people are saying and what people are suffering from. And I just cannot and I will not vote for these massive increases in council tax for the people I represent. So I'll be voting with the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Lane next, please.
Thanks. I cannot go with the proposals put forward. I was sitting in BRG 12 weeks ago, and there was no mention of going for 6 years. There was no mention of going 6% every year. So this has come up very recently as a proposal. I feel that we've had 3 votes today. The first one was we need more money for the government for health and social care. That's fair enough. The second one was let's give some money away. And then this one is let's take as much money, don't put forward any proposals to minimise the expenditure, set it for 6% in 5 years' time. It's very difficult for us as elected members to actually reduce it because we don't know where any savings are. We have to have proposals put forward where we can choose them and we can set the strategic direction. The proposals in this medium-term financial plan have taken away all the choice we have moving forward. We will be left having to accept everything, or we've to find 50 grand here, 50 grand. It's not the 50 grands. We're looking at millions of pounds that's going to be coming in here. And one bit we're looking for elderly people in health and social care. A lot of these people live in band E, F, G houses. They live in there. They can't heat themselves. They can't keep themselves. And we're going to be putting, if you're paying £300 a month, in 7 years' time, you'll be paying £500 and something a month. How can we possibly put that in the public domain at this time and then say we can change it later? If we go with the amendment, we can change that later if we want to. If we need to raise money, we can put the price up. Don't set it high and then leave it there, set it low and put it up if you have to. So I'll be supporting the amendment.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Scott Walker, the Chief Financial Officer, to provide a very tight point of clarification for members. It is not a part of the debate and it is not open for questions. It is purely information being provided as a point of clarification to elected members, because obviously we are in debate and therefore officers don't take part in debate. But I've agreed a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you, Provost. So councillors will be aware we set provisional revenue budgets back in February of this year at the rates back then. If the amendment was carried, we would need to find an additional £2.6 million of savings in 26-27 and £3.3 million in 27-28. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Councillor Illingworth next, please.
Thank you, Provost. I don't know how many times we've heard the words cost of living crisis. I think our constituents are now going to face a cost of council tax crisis. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Rebeck.
Thanks very much, Provost. I think it's a perfectly legitimate amendment in the sense that the cost of living crisis is affecting people, and the motivation to keep council tax as low as possible is an honourable one. I take issue with some of the comments, though. The Scottish Government, with its fixed budget and a failing UK economy, is not why we're here. Why we're here, there's many reasons, but it is COVID, it is high energy costs. We do live in a country where we're endowed with natural energy, whether it's fossil fuels or indeed blessed with renewables, and yet we have the highest energy costs in Europe and amongst them. So there's lots of reasons why we're here speaking about council tax. I think it's a shame as well that there's lots of other really positive stories in this paper. It's not just about an indicative council tax, but that seems to be lost. So I just go back to, it's perfectly legitimate to try and keep council tax bills as low as possible, but we are voting for indicative cuts here. Let's be clear about that. And I think it is disingenuous for members to recognise and vote for a health and social care emergency and then immediately impose £2.5 million worth of cuts on an indicative council tax. It is hypocritical.
Thank you, Councillor Rebeck. Councillor Liz Barrett's next.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you to Scott and the team for all the work on this medium-term financial plan. I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone in this chamber when I say that not one of us here wants large increases in council tax, and I'm sorry this council didn't adopt previous Lib Dem proposals for increases of around 6% in recent years, which would have avoided the need for these hikes, but we are where we are. In February, we confirmed our approach to the medium-term financial plan and the indicative council tax increases for 3 years, and at that time I welcomed the SNP's recognition at last of the need for realistic council tax increases to mitigate the impacts of the 10 years of Scottish Government freeze and the restrictions on our spending and the ongoing underfunding of local authorities. For the current year of 25-26, we managed to avoid making more cuts to services for the first time in years and to even invest in some areas. I'm now dismayed by the amendment proposing that we should rewrite the plan and undermine our financial stability just now when we don't have enough information to make such decisions. We've just recognised the health and social care emergency, and Mr. Walker's reminded us of some of the challenges we face, but I personally fear actually some of our assumptions in this paper are a bit optimistic. I can't apologise for sounding like a stuck record and reiterating we need to put and keep the council's finances on a realistic and sustainable footing. Cuts are only mentioned twice in the paper, but they highlight that even more stringent cuts and reductions in service quality will be needed to balance the budget. And Mr. Walker's indicated that we're looking at up to 10 million if we don't have funding coming without mitigations that may or may not come from elsewhere. The paper also says that these are likely to have the greatest impact, as ever, on those who are most in need of the services that the council delivers. Every 1% we don't raise in council tax takes 1.3 million from our budget, hitting services to our communities and jobs for our own workforce and for those who deliver the many services that we rely on. That's things like tackling the health and social care emergency. That's continuing to tackle child poverty and homelessness. That's modern apprenticeships and opportunities for young people, tackling support in classrooms for pupils with ASN to reduce disruption in the classes. It's taking action on the climate and change and biodiversity emergencies and providing warm, dry homes and dealing with impacts of flooding and severe weather events, and supporting our strategic investment plans to meet our common goal, which is a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live life well, free from poverty and inequality. We don't know what will be in the Scottish Government budget for local government next year, but the track record isn't great. We don't know whether ministers listen to our calls and calls from across the country for help with the health and social care emergency. We don't know how much more we as a council will need to put into social care this year and next, because we haven't seen the IGB recommendations. And we're seeing our reserves dwindling this year close to the lower limit of our safe range of 2 to 4% of our budget. I do recognise that the plan is just a base for planning, and we make the real decisions on next year's council tax levels at the end of February. I do hope that we'll be able to plan for lower increases in future years when we have more information, but this is not the time to change our medium-term financial plan, and I ask you please to support the recommendations in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liz Barrett. Councillor Forbes.
Oh, sorry.
I find myself in complete agreement with Councillor Robertson and Councillor Lang, which gives me some concern. In fact, I'm thinking I might get them getting some membership forms from the Conservative Party, given their views on tax, which I of course applaud. Not so sure I agree entirely with Bailey McLaren, because I certainly couldn't go to my constituents and suggest that we're looking, even considering this level of council tax. I will absolutely be voting with the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McEwen next.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think what we've been put in front of us here isn't any political party in this room's or independent council in this room's views of what we should do with council tax, even though some seem to be portraying it as such, as if they're prerequisiting their budget speeches for March. What we've got in front of us here is an honest view from an excellent financial team telling us that the services that we run, that the demand that we have, and that the cost pressures that we are under as a council, energy costs to our constituents and ourselves, are the same energy costs that the council has to deal with. Alios have to deal with increasing costs, VAT, rises in wages for their staff. We have to deal with rises in wages for our staff. We have to create the expectation for the public that this is where public finances sit. To sit and say and give them the false impression that we're going to make £2 million worth of cuts for where we currently sit to go at 7.5%, without knowing what the Scottish Government's doing, and then to troll out the 3.75% and the further cuts that will bring, is delusional. It's creating a false impression to our community that everything's going to be affordable. Or is it a tactic of saying that what we'll do is we'll underfund everything, we'll cut services, and we'll just blame somebody else? The 40 of us here in this chamber and online are the ones that are responsible for this. My wish is that the numbers that the amendment says on the board there is where we end up. I would love to know the future, to know that we can predict that, and that's where we'll be. I think we all do in this chamber. But it's cloud cuckoo land, the information that our financial team has, who are unbiased and are experts in their field, are telling us this is where we're at. This is where the macroeconomics of the UK has us at this time. If there are opportunities not to do what's in the paper itself, then we'll grasp that with both hands and with enthusiasm. But we can only take those decisions as they come and when they come. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I've got 2 points of order. I've got one from Councillor James, which is to look to go to the go straight to the vote, which I will come to in a second. I've also got one from Councillor Drysdale. I don't know what that one's on. What I'm going to say is, if the three people who are yet to speak would agree to be quite brief in their closing remarks, Councillor James might agree to withdraw his point of order. So that's Councillor Peter Barrett, Councillor Duff and Councillor McCall. Are you content to be quite brief in your closing speeches? Yes. Councillor Duff, yes. And Councillor McCall, yes. Right. Councillor James, on the basis that the three members left to speak have agreed to be brief in their closing remarks, are you happy to let me take those closing remarks briefly?
Thank you very much, Provost. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Eric Drysdale, your point of order.
My point of order, Provost, was in relation to the chat here, where there was a suggestion that this would go to the vote without further debate. I would like to request a short, and I do really mean short, 5-minute recess at the end of comments, in order that we can consider our position as a group and respond appropriately. Thank you.
I'm seeing a lot of dissent, to be honest, to that suggestion. However,
may not even be 5 minutes.
Well, I think 2 minutes, and you can convene over there if that's possible. Is that okay? Yes, I'm waiting for them to consent to 2 minutes. Are you agreeing to 2 minutes recess at the end of the debate? Right, okay. So next up, Councillor Peter Barrett, you're next to make your remarks.
Thanks, Provost. And I think it might be useful for me to point out to Councillor Drysdale, because given the tone of his speech, I didn't think there was going to be a need for an adjournment. But if the SNP group fail to stand by the recommendations of this report and accommodate the amendment in any way, then I'll be moving the recommendations of the report, and I'm pretty sure I'll get a seconder from one of my group. Last year, I commended the strategic lead for finance on his professional advice regarding the council tax strategy and the robustness and realism which characterised his medium-term financial plan. We had an attempt last year by the Conservatives to delete one of the recommendations there, which would have left a 5% or £6 million black hole in our budget. It was an unrealistic political stunt then, and it's been replicated as an unrealistic political stunt by Councillor Colin Stewart here today. It is pure populist cakeism, promising the people of Perth continued levels of service, in fact enhanced levels of service in health and social care without having to pay for them. It is consequence-free nonsense, and it's just typical of the small government anti-tax brigade, Tufton Street right-wing think tank nonsense that Colin Stewart supports. And we've suffered as a council for this for far too long, and I've called out that sort of behaviour in the past. I'm going to be very quick, Provost. Councillor Robertson says that he doesn't want to make people poorer. If you do the arithmetic that was pointed out by the strategic lead for finance, we're talking about taking an extra £6.5 million out of the budget next year. So that's 120 people's jobs, 120 people who are going to be a lot poorer and thrown on the scrap heap. And then every year after that, we're going to kick another 60 people out of work under Colin Stewart's plan. It is nonsense, and we shouldn't tolerate it for a moment.
Right, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. Just a comment. Obviously, Councillor McEwen there talked about the implications of accepting the amendment, but neither should I think that we should presume that we should add another £75 million or thereabouts to the council tax bill over the next year either. I think we need to continue to look at ways to keep council tax down, and we need to have a budget process which examines this rather than presuming a 9.5% increase. I'll vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Before I come to you, Councillor McCall, I have a point of order from Councillor McHugh. No, it's cancelled. Wonderful. Councillor McCall, final comment, and then we're moving to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. in the interest of brevity, I agree with both councillors Barrett wholeheartedly and others who have spoken in support of the motion. However, I would like to challenge quite considerably the assumption that 3.2% represents a cost of living increase and debt management, I think is it you said, Colin, or debt support. For Councillor Stewart to come out with that as the chair of the IGB and now vice chair of the IGB totally and utterly denies the fact that the increase in demand and the increase in our population and demographics has not contributed to this need for increased funding. I would also point out to colleagues elsewhere in the chamber that we're not setting the council tax today. We need to remember that this is a mid-term financial plan that we approved last year, and that officers who are more experts in their field, and certainly I am, have come forward and says this is what we need to move forward with as a baseline. To say this is a setting of council tax is completely and utterly wrong. I think that the movers of this amendment and those who support it are very clearly looking for a political headline, and that's it. And they're paying a scant disregard, total disregard to the population of Perth and Kinross. Thank you, Provost.
Right, thank you. As I agreed, you can have up to 2-minute recess, and we will begin. Please, everyone stay where you are apart from the SNP group or anyone else who needs to convene. Okay, that's about 2 minutes, and I'm going to start the summing up, and we'll make sure everyone is back before we vote. So, Councillor Stewart, you're summing up first.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think Councillor Rebeck said it first, and then it's been repeated a number of times since, that voting for the amendment would be voting for cuts to council services in future years. But I was very explicit that this would be an instruction that would bring forward more savings proposals from officers that councillors could then consider as a suite of options. We have always, ever since I became a councillor, we have been had a dearth of options available to us in order to choose between. And the other thing that I said was explicitly that I would expect it to be pushing further and faster towards transformation, and that I knew that officers of both the council and the Health and Social Care Partnership were up for that challenge. That's an enormous area where there's a real opportunity to deliver efficiencies in services, and therefore lower cost services for the same level of service. Councillor Rebeck said that this was voting for, this amendment was a vote for cuts, but it is also a vote for not pushing more of our constituents closer to the poverty line, and that's why I commend it to the chamber.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leader, to sum up your motion.
Thank you, Provost. Interestingly, last year, this council approved a 3-year plan where the compound increase was 28.26%. So when we're talking about these kind of figures now, let's just bear that in mind. What I would like to say here today is a couple of things. We have, and you know, he's just sitting to my left here. We have an excellent Chief Financial Officer here who has made strong recommendations based on his professional judgment. I, for one, respect his, I challenge them, but I respect his views, and I agree that we really need to ensure that we are able to sustain our finances in challenging times where we do not know what's around the corner. We don't know what's there in January with the Scottish budget. We don't know what's going to happen to the Health and Social Care Partnership until IJB meets. But what we do know is that we have huge challenges. So Councillor McEwen hit the nail on the head with his contribution a short while ago, that these are delusional figures if we think that we can continue to provide and, where possible, improve public services, whilst at the same time having the levels of council tax increase that have been set out in the amendment. It just doesn't add up. This administration unanimously is supportive of the officer's recommendation here. But what I would once again reiterate and plead with media to carry this message, that we don't want these levels of council tax to be approved in March. Nothing would make me happier than to have these lower figures that were on the screen a moment or two ago. Nothing would make me happier. But we, you know, by suggesting to the public that we are planning towards that, and that therefore that we can, it's an achievable plan, is for the birds, unless there's some windfall that nobody in this chamber is aware of. So we will remain with our motion.
Right, thank you very much. That concludes debate of this item. We now move to the vote on this item. Mr. Hendry.
Thank you, Provost. Members, we're dealing with item 9 on the agenda, report by the Chief Finance Officer. We have a motion by Councillor Drysdale, seconded by Councillor Donaldson, to agree the recommendations set out in the report. We have an amendment by Councillor Colin Stewart, seconded by Councillor Cuthbert, the terms of which were shown on the screen. So when I call out members' name, can they confirm if they're voting for the motion by Councillor Drysdale or the amendment by Councillor Stewart? Bailey Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Allen.
Amendment.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Bailey.
Amendment.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Amendment.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Forbes.
Amendment.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Freshwater.
Amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Kogali.
Amendment.
Councillor Lang.
Amendment.
Councillor McPherson. Councillor Mayor.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Provost.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
Councillor Shires.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith.
Amendment.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Watt.
Abstain.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Councillor Welch.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Provost, we have 19 votes for the motion, 20 votes for the amendment, with 1 abstention, so the amendment is therefore carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, that concludes item 9. Members, item 10 is appointments to committee. Are we happy to agree the changes to committees as set out on the agenda? Good, thank you. Members, item 11 is update the scheme of administration. Are we happy to agree the changes to the scheme of administration as set out on the agenda? Thank you. Members, item 12, elected member briefing notes. We have to note the elected member briefing notes that have been issued since the last council meeting on the 29th of October as set out in the agenda. Agreed. Thank you very much, members, for your perseverance today, and to those who have joined us in the chamber and online. Have a safe journey home.